Hello and good morning and welcome to the 10th Aegean Film Festival and the Location Greece Conference with the support of the Hellenic Film Commission by the Greek Film Center. And thank you so much for coming to the island of Spetses. And thank you so much for flying from all over the world to join us and share a piece of knowledge and how we can make things better and how we can train and, let's say, upgrade our skills and understanding and our philosophy as well about how to film on location and how to offer services connected to foreign productions or international co-productions. The conference is going to take place in English. If somebody doesn't speak, εάν κάποιος δεν μιλάει αγγλικά και θα ήθελε διερμηνία, υπάρχει διαθέσιμη διερμηνία και μπορεί να κάτσει δίπλα σας να σας εξηγήσει. Αλλιώς θα συνεχίσει το συνέδριο στα αγγλικά. Sorry, that was interpreting asterisk. So if somebody needs interpreting, there is available. So my name is Babis Tsoutsas. I'm the director of the festival, and with a fantastic team of young people, of mainly 20 to 30-year-olds. We made the festival a possibility during COVID, during these very difficult times, that anyone who's doing productions knows very well how difficult it is to film during COVID. So we want to welcome you, and we want to say a few words about the program and what's going to follow over the next 2 days. The idea is that we will discuss and listen and think on what means to film on location abroad. Giorgos Nardakis, a very good friend and very old festival nomad since the first festivals, together with Agata. They were helping us, and this year they decided to join forces together with Steffi Productions and present together this workshop. So I would like to welcome him and ask him to tell us a few things about the program. Thank you so much for coming.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. My name is George Nardakis. I'm producer of Steffi Productions. And I will tell you, I'll take 5 minutes to tell you a small story that happened. Less than 6 weeks ago, I was producing an Australian film that was shot in Athens. A couple of days before we start shooting on Saturday, we will start shooting on Monday, the director of photography, the whole camera crew, and the sound designer contacted COVID. So we had to change these 4 people. We had to change them on a Saturday and on Sunday. We started shooting on Monday as nothing happened. Vasilis was there, he was working with us. We knew what happened. We shot for 5 weeks. During these 5 weeks, almost everyone contacted COVID. The lead actor, who was 15 years old, he was going to school, so he got it at school. We had to change locations, we had to change the whole schedule. But in a very miraculous and magnificent way, we managed to finish the film on schedule. We didn't lose 1 day of shooting. And that was because we had an amazing team of production and a fantastic location manager. I think that location managers are the people that do a lot of things. Most of the times their work is not recognized, it's not taking the attention that it needs. So as me, as a producer, and as a production company that we wish to do a lot of things in the future, we had this idea with Babis that we need to bring here people, as you guys, I thank you very much. You flew from all over the world during this difficult time. I know you're all very busy and you changed your schedules, and thank you for this. So with Babis, we had this idea, we as a production company, and with the support of the Hellenic Film Commission and Venya, who worked very, very, very hard on this. We had the idea of bringing here the professionals and me as myself as a professional to hear you guys, to listen what you have to say, to learn from you. and to make us better, because Greece is emerging as a filming destination. We are hosting a lot of productions here. And location management is a very, very delicate situation. You know, location managers need to find ships, they need to find cars, they need to find naked people walking on sets. They need to find a lot of things. And we're going to need your expertise, we're going to need your knowledge, we're going to need your help. So thank you again for coming. And it's a pleasure to have you here. And I look forward to listening to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. This conference couldn't be possible, though, without the very important contribution of the Hellenic Film Commission of the Greek Film Center and Venia Vergou specifically, that she did this amazing work. She organized us. She pushed for excellence, to find structure, to bring more people, and to advertise it, and to send the invitations. It's all on Venia. So I would like to ask Venia to come and say hello. If you need a printout or something, we can wait. Don't worry. We are in Greece. We are in Greek time. Things happening slowly. There is a rhythm. There's a natural rhythm, Venia, in this sea, in this island. And we have to learn a little bit from the environment that we are in. We came from all over, from Cannes, from Athens. We fly from Los Angeles and London, and then we land on the island, and boom, time changes. So thank you so much for making all this possible. We are here because of you. Please come and say hello.
Thank you so much for this introduction. I'm very happy to be here, and thank you all for coming from Athens or other places in Greece. I was very, very pleased when Babis and Yorgos approached the Hellenic Film Commission of the Greek Film Center, asking us to join forces for this wonderful idea of this conference. And I immediately had the idea of specifically curating this workshop into the location management, because from the perspective of film commissions, location managers are our heroes. And I totally believe that. They are the unknown heroes of the everyday life in film industry. They make things possible, and they never get the acknowledgement they deserve. So being a member of the AFCI and the UFCN, the Film Commissions networks and associations, we have strong contacts with Location Guild, Location Managers Guild International. So we approached the guild, and we had an immediate response from them. And we were very happy, and we are very honored to have you here. So I will present you our guests, and then I will leave the floor to you. So we're happy to have here JJ Levine, who is the first Vice President of LMGI. JJ is a location scout and manager, and she has recently completed additional cinematography on Marvel's The Eternals, and she's currently in prep on Maya Rudolph's unnamed Apple TV series. She has worked on hundreds of commercials, and her numerous credits include Diary of a Future President, as well as Sunnyside, Gumshoe, The Mayor, What About Barb, The Future Man. Levine was the location manager for the 2015-2016 primetime ABC series The Muppets, the Bollywood film My Name is Khan, and Joseph Kahn's highly controversial Power Rangers short film. She is the recipient of multiple location awards, including those from California on Location and the Location Managers Guild International, and has been honored by the Mayor of Los Angeles for her work in that city. And in her early career as a key assistant location manager, Levine worked on the highly successful television franchise NCIS Los Angeles and Criminal Minds, Suspect Behavior. Finally, she recently launched and moderates the highly successful educational Zoom series, Coffee Tuesdays with the LMGI. And then we have Alison A. Taylor, who is the second Vice President of LMGI. Over the course of her 25-year career as a location manager for film and television, Alison Taylor has had the privilege of working on many recognizable projects, including Training Day, The Soloist, The First Purge, Purge Election Year, BAPS, Southland, Insecure, and many more. She is extremely proud of her work on the just-released limited series for Amazon Studios, The Underground Railroad. Already considered an Emmy contender, The series is based on a Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Colson Whitehead and was adapted for television and directed by Academy Award-winning director Barry Jenkins. Allison most recently completed work on additional photography for Marvel's Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings, and has won 3 Californian Location Awards, voted by her peers for the excellence of her work as a location manager. Her awards were for her work on Southland in 2012, Straight Outta Compton 2015, and A Wrinkle in Time 2017. She's an active member of Hollywood Teamsters Local 399, Location Managers Guild International, Behind the Scenes Mental Health and Suicide Prevention Initiative, and the Alpha Gamma Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And
I know, I'm getting chills just thinking about Alpha.
And last but not least, there's Dan Connolly from the UK. Dan is also a member of the board at the LMGI. We thought that it was really important to have people from LA, but also from the UK. So there's Dan, and Dan Connolly has worked in locations over 23 years, starting at the very bottom as a runner. An active location manager for 20 of those years, he works across formats in television, features, and commercials. Credits include Transformers: The Last Night, Morbius, Devs, War Machine, and Phantom Thread. He also worked as an in-house LM and advisor for the Abu Dhabi Film Commission during a boom period for that region, where they shot Fast and Furious 7 and Star Wars. A member of the UK Film and Broadcast Union, as a location branch committee member, recently elected as an LMGI board member. Dan Connolly is an active member on the LMGI Coffee Tuesdays committee and looks forward to what the next 20 years hold in the location department, and is dedicated to promoting excellence on location. So thank you all for coming, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for being here and for your interest in locations. As members and board members of the LMGI, we are, as a group, trying to advance the level of location management and location scouting worldwide, and to bring everybody up to a standard of work and cooperation. And it's very lovely to be in a global setting like this. We want to give everybody today an overview of the location department, what our roles are, and what we do as location managers. And we often say that much of our job, if we're doing it well, is not seen. And, you know, as Vanya said, that also results in not getting credit for a lot of what we do. And if any of you are location managers out in this group, you know exactly what we are speaking of. We want to keep it pretty light and friendly and casual. We are going to have a Q&A at the end. But if there's something that you don't understand or any questions that you have as we go along, please feel free to raise your hands and we will call on you to answer questions as we go. I'm going to start right in on the structure of the location department, and I'm going to speak to that predominantly from the perspective of Los Angeles and California locations. Allison will then speak about other areas in the United States, and Dan will talk about the UK and about bringing locations into other areas and other countries. So we'll start at the top and work our way down. And the top of the tier is the supervising location manager. The supervising location manager oversees, particularly usually in a very large television series or very large film that's action-oriented. Thank you very much, George. Oh, so much better. And now I'm going to come even more. So they are responsible for supervising the other location managers that work in other regions on the production. Underneath that, we have the location manager. The location manager is responsible for securing the locations along with their team who work underneath them, for overseeing all of the contracts, and essentially making sure, as usual, that the production goes along seamlessly. Our soldiers in the field include our key assistant location managers and our assistant location managers. We often, as one of those roles, have a location coordinator who kind of unifies the office setting, brings together all of the paperwork, all of they're sort of the hub of the wheel, often spreading out the information throughout the things. Usually the key assistant manager is in charge of a specific location. And the key assistant manager then is responsible for everything having to do with that location, interacting with the homeowner or the location representative, making sure the permit is correct, even though the location manager may be doing the big permit. People often work in different ways. Some people have their key assistants doing the film permit. Some people have their key assistants just informing the film permit. They are responsible for making sure that all of the necessary items get to that location, whether that is how are we going to do lunch there, where are we going to do lunch there, where are we going to park the crew, what tying up the street, what if we need to, let's say, hang a flag from the location across the street, or we need to dress all of the locations along the street because we're doing a period piece, or we need to get rid of all the cars. They're responsible for the day-to-day on that set. We often, particularly in television and in film too, we're often, as location managers, moving forward. They're on the set, making sure everything is wrapped up and fine. We are going ahead to the next day or the next week's work. The assistant location manager is much of the same role. They are often what we call closers. So they come in to finish out the day's work, make sure the set is wrapped up, and also still facilitate everything that is going on the set. And then, of course, we have the location scout. And all of these roles that we're talking about can also be a location scout, or a location scout can be an independent person who only does the scouting. And of course, the location scout is looking for the locations. They read and interpret the script. They are looking for the best location to fulfill the creative definition of the script. And as scouting goes along, and we'll get into scouting a little bit deeper as we go along, the scouts are also looking for the practicality of, can we actually film there? I mean, as we always say, there's always these incredible scout photos that the scouts have sometimes taken. And when you're a good scout, you realize that, well, you have to be able to turn around and look behind you and make sure that a camera can actually get behind you. There isn't an inch and your back isn't against the wall, or there isn't a 3-mile hike up a canyon and a steep trail to be able to get up to the top of the hill to try to film this scene. So with that, I think I'll turn it to Allison to talk about the workflow of the locations department. We can pass this.
Is it on? It's on. It's on. Hello. So the reason, so JJ and I are both based in Los Angeles, and the reason we're sort of separating this is because I've spent some time in the East Coast and in Georgia, in the South, working as well, and things within the United States are actually done differently. Dan will speak to the UK, but it's important when you have a production that's coming from the US here, that you know where those people are coming from, because within our own country, we do things differently. And so sometimes we get it all mixed up while we're working together because the people from Atlanta think they know what they're doing, and the people from Louisiana think they know what they're doing, and the people from LA, we really think we know what we're doing, and that we're all mixed up. So one of the key differences, and I'm speaking about union projects, larger projects, because when you're in the non-union world, then there's all sorts of variations, because you're just trying to get it done. But if we're talking about larger studio productions, then the differences that you'll find, JJ was breaking down the difference between the location manager and the key and the assistant manager. But in other areas in the East Coast and in Atlanta, we also have location PAs, production assistants. And it is huge. We've had a lot of conversation about this. There's a huge difference in how we operate with those. In other areas, we will travel with a location truck, and we pack all sorts of things into that truck. And we have a team of PAs that are basically labor, that are running around moving air conditioning units, setting up pop-up tents, everything that is practical on the set in that moment. And people are calling on the walkie to say, hey, we need this over here. Somebody come turn this air on. And you're just running around accommodating the shooting crew the whole time you're filming and doing pre-setup, everything from the directional signage. All of that is done by a team of location PAs. And a lot of it is held, I know Pittsburgh, Rhode Island, we'll keep that truck full of things. In Los Angeles, we don't have a truck. We have vendors that we hire to come do everything every time, and they show up and they drop off everything and they'll set it up. But it's different because the union location managers or assistant location managers don't feel like it's their job to move glow bug lights around or heaters or air conditioning. They sort of feel like, we got it here for you, work it out. Whereas in other places, we do have a team of production assistants that are there to hustle all day long, and you're calling on the radio. So the funny thing is, I just did a job that shot most of the film in Atlanta. And then they came to Los Angeles to shoot all of the exteriors and car chases and all of that. And they brought a lot of the Atlanta people, and Atlanta people on the walkie calling for locations to come do this, that, and the other. And locations was answering like, we don't do that. So it's really important to know where your crew is coming from and what that conversation is going to be and who is going to do what. Because as proud of ourselves as we are, it really sets the tone of the production if you jump in and you have not had the conversation up front about what the expectation is of the department. And that is really based on where everyone is coming from. And I know I'm going to hand this over to Dan because they have a whole different system in the UK versus what we're doing in the US.
Thanks, Alison. Kalimera. My experience is a kind of a halfway house between the US setup, which we've already heard is multivarious, state to state, and union, non-union, and then UK production that then goes to other countries, usually a US production based in the UK for the rebate package, that then springboards from the UK studios over to other areas in Europe or beyond. So, and take some UK crew with them, specifically location teams and added local teams that we find or source when we get there. So it feels more pertinent to why perhaps the Greek model might work in that way as well, in the sense that the terminology is important, the role names are important and what those roles mean, to avoid anybody slipping through the net, something not being done, a blame game thing happening when something doesn't happen, which is when people are stressed and tired and short of time. Sometimes, with the best will in the world, that kind of happens. So we have to have thick skin as well in order to absorb those body blows and go, right, okay, we never discussed what the word key location manager meant when we never used the word key in UK production. I don't have any keys that work for me. I have an assistant location manager who works for the location manager. And that if there's 2 or 3 location managers, then I already rise to the top to become a supervising, because I need to tell them, you go to Glasgow, you go somewhere else, you go to, so, and then they take all of their teams with them. But it's an important point to make that we have to assimilate into US terminology as much as possible in order to understand that we're speaking the same language. You add to that Arabic, which is my experience mainly abroad, or Greek, or any other language barrier that might, and also maybe there's a slightly more informal Greek setup. Somebody I spoke to yesterday said there's some productions where they don't even have a location team. The production designer, the UPM might go and source locations in order to make that happen. So there's no specific departmental overview there, which from our point of view as representatives of the LMGI, we're all about driving standards up, keeping our professional credentials visible and out there so that people respect what we do, and resource our department to give people what they need to make that production happen. So I think the recognition that we're striving to achieve is important for other countries to do as well, in order to make sure that they get recognized as it's a specific department. You're not a bolt-on department to production. You're not a welded-on department of the art department. It's none of that. It's a specific, and even within the location teams, there are specific things like, I might be speaking to some army general one morning, and then I'm speaking to a bin man about the refuse collection the next day. So, you're speaking about different conversations, so you have to vacillate and move and be adaptable in order to know what your role as a location manager is, and then your team you need to imprint that on your team. So, for instance, we have a unit manager in the UK who looks after, I made the mistake of saying to Alison, anything with wheels. It's not anything with wheels, because a transport captain looks after the moving machinery of filming, but anything peripheral that's to do with not the location and the camera team in that specific location. So it could be, you call them vendors. We don't really specify who those vendors are, but it could be the company that arrives with the refuse collection, or the air conditioners, or the easy up tents, or the whatever, the metal trackway to put on the field so we can park a unit in there, or whatever. So that in itself, for a large US production, is like a small army of people. So that in itself has to be managed by, in my opinion, and this is what happens, by a unit manager who then hires the people who needs to do it, or has assistants who help him do that. The location manager then would deal directly with the designer, the director, the producers, the line producers, to have those conversations at a higher level about initially the creative, and then after that. So what happens as an anecdote, I sometimes say, in the beginning, in pre-production, you and the director are driving around, your best friends, you're having long lunches, you're talking about film references and the creative and how you can make this work to encapsulate this guy's vision with the scripts as well. And then when it comes to production, he'll cut in front of the catering queue like you don't exist, because he's focused on a different thing now. He's with his DOP, and you have to just say, right, I did my bit. Now I'm dealing with bins, And so your ego has to be adaptable. You you have to be tolerant of the production process and how you're important at one level at one stage, and then you're kind of less important to them at another stage. But that's okay, because you're getting the day is getting done. You're achieving it, and most importantly, your department never slowed down a single minute of production, which is what we all try to achieve, so that everything stays on schedule and stays on budget. So those are the differences a little bit, and it's important, I guess, for an incoming production. For instance, the one over there that's happening right now, they'll have maybe a mixture of British and US producers, or UPMs, or PMs, or location managers. who will kind of constantly calibrate how they reference departments in order to understand where we're at. And then you've got the local teams who, again, will be listening to how that is and how that works. So, for instance, sometimes you get to an island like this and you want to film. There are no crew. You don't always want to bring everybody from Athens because the budget won't sustain like bringing in 200 people from Athens, or there's not enough accommodation or whatever it may be. So you have to recruit locally. You know, I've done it where I've recruited farmers boys, people that can drive trucks, trailers, tractors, you name it, anything, you know, to get some labor together. And we corral them and quickly give them like a battlefield promotion to say, right, you're an assistant. I know you've never done 2 days of filming in your life. Hang on tight, you know, because you're not on the farm anymore, you know. So, you know, we have to be adaptable. And sometimes those people are the best at that because they know the environment, they know everyone who lives here, they know how to get hold of stuff that we can't get hold of. You know, they know the guy that has the water truck, they know the guy that has the ice truck, they know the guy that has it's their cousin or it's their uncle or whoever it is, right? So there's ways of building a department, like a scratch department. When you're, you know, I was in Saudi Arabia just before setting up some stuff. We were getting desert guides who did tourism. There was hardly any tourism in that region, only local tourism. And I was promoting them into assistants and scouts and teaching them the fundamentals and rudiments of what I needed for scout photographs in order for me to present them, you know. So I'm kind of like creating departments from what's available. Obviously in LA, it's a difference of, you know, in London or UK, it's a different because everybody's there and they've got their IMD profiles and this, that, and the other. So when you're beginning to sort of get busy with more and more production that's incoming, let's say, for example, in Greece or wherever, training is really important coming through to try and like feed the production machine with people who are going to get guided in the right way and trained in the right way to offer the service that's required for the incoming producers. You know, so.
And don't you find too, when you I think one of the challenges when you're bringing those people in that don't have that production experience is that just the expediency and the speed and the time of getting things done is like the hardest thing to drill into a lot of people.
Yeah, I used to say to assistants who'd never really done it before, I would buy them a policeman's notebook, you know, a little note, like a policeman's like pocketbook thing, and a pencil, and I'd say, right, use that every time I talk to you. Write down what I say, because you'll forget it. And they're fresh from college and whatever, and they're like, I won't forget, and they forget because there's 50 things that needed to be done that day. And then I say to them, tell me at the end of the day what you didn't achieve. Add it to the next day, and then there's another 50 things and another 50 things. But if you don't write it down, I can't trust that you're going to do this, and I have to check all the time, and I don't have time to check all the time. So it's teaching those people responsibility for their own actions. I won't leave them high and dry, but they need to remember what I've said. I won't say it more than twice. And then if you're late more than twice, that's like, I don't know about this, you know, it's not working out. So, you know, it can be a tough world to be in. We're always there before anybody else. We're always there after everyone else is gone. You know, the director will turn up in the limo, bang on 8 o'clock, let's say, or whatever it is, and he'll have breakfast given to him or whatever. And that's his world now. That's what we've been there since 5 or more. We might have had a whole team working through the night to get everything ready for that one day of filming, and then do the reverse all the next day and the next location that you move to. So it's a constantly moving machine full of logistics, expectations, pressure, budgets, time, schedule, blah, blah, blah. And if you're not across that, and if your team are unsure about what their job title is and what they're supposed to be doing, things are going to get left out. And that's on us. That's on you and me and you, that we didn't express ourselves more clearly enough, you know. That's my opinion.
And I was
So-
going to say, too, that one of the things, given the milieu of an international production, is to not be afraid to ask questions and say, is this covered, because of the difference of the roles, and because is to, be constantly checking, like, who is this done, who did this, that is the role of the location manager and the location team. So it's a constant checking in and checking in and checking in on that list that Dan is talking about.
I mean, there's some things you have to triage because you do get so busy. So crew will come up to me and say, they'll say stuff like, where's the catering? And it's like, the number of times I've wanted to get T-shirts printed saying, I'm not catering, I'm not transport, I'm not production, know my role. And then you won't ask me questions that aren't to do with my department. Speak to the line producer or the UPM about those. I could have a construction department there, I mentioned this morning, who are there 5 weeks before the crew get there. So I'm setting up the construction guys to do big step builds in the desert or wherever it is. And they'll come to me and say, what hotel are we staying at? How do I know? I don't do accommodation. I don't, I've got my apartment in town. I don't really know it. So sometimes other crew department members don't know what we do. So we have to educate them about what we do as well, to say, that's not my job. I don't do craft. I don't move the craft table. That's not my job. And in our eagerness to help when we start our careers, we're eager to do anything and everything to help everybody on a set, because we're the kind of like generic department. You make a rod for your back if you don't learn. You will learn quickly that if you try and help too much with everything, it will always be your fault, even though it's not your responsibility. So if that's what you want to live with, great, but I don't. So, I need to know what my responsibilities are. So I'm my team, But.
Well, let's turn it over to Allison to talk about the workflow, speaking of that, of the location department.
He's masked, man. I can't have the glasses and the mask on at the same time. So the workflow, we actually touched on it a little bit. Can I ask a question? Because I know this is introduction to location management. How many people out here actually work in the location department already? Okay. Okay, great.
Yay,
okay.
That's great.
That's good. Because part of what Dan was saying is that we have a workflow that half the crew doesn't understand anyway. I find that our department is divided into two halves. The first half of our job is the creative side, which is the scouting. And my specialty is management. I've scouted plenty. I've done a lot of scouting. At this point, I hire scouts. And sometimes you have a scout hired by the line producer or producers directly. And so all of that is done up front. Sometimes, which probably on international, you probably get that a lot. You probably get the production company working with the film commission, working with maybe one particular scout, and you get that scouting up front. And oftentimes you get a location manager who's hired, and then we hire the scouts. So that's kind of a blurry thing, but the first half is the scouting. And just to Dan's point about that beginning, the whole first half, when we're just all in love with each other in the director's van, and the director cares about us, and the designer cares, everyone loves us in the beginning. And it's that small world of the first AD and the director and the DP and the designer and line producer and the location manager, and a love fest. And we find everything, and that's like the cool, groovy part. And then once the creative piece is done, then we move on to the job, the rest of the job, which is logistics. And it is, how do we make this happen? And it's an interesting world that we live in, because the other crew members see us as one thing or the other. So the director has seen us as the person that has helped them find the locations, and the designer as well. But then now we're dealing with the crew who thinks that our entire job is the restroom is not working, and that we're out of water in the Porto, or the trash bin is overflowing, and they see us in a very, very narrow scope, and they lack an understanding of our role, which is 1 foot in production and 1 foot in the real world, and we can't make everything happen for you simply because we are restricted by the real world that's happening around us, and we're not on a backlot. So the first half, having gotten all the creative part, now we get into the world of getting the location. Step number 1 in the workflow. We've picked all these fantastic places, and now it's about, okay, how do we get a deal done? We negotiate, we get a contract, we work with the film commission and the municipalities to get the permits done. We deal with the fire safety, we deal with the local police, we deal with the merchants and the residents, and this whole world of trying to make it happen, trying to say we picked it, but can we get to it? I mean, I'm sure we've all done jobs where we've had to build a road to get to something because we've picked some great location and we can't necessarily access it without additional help, or we're working out in the water. So all of that part is now like the big meat of what we're doing. And then we finally get to the on-set piece where is everyone parking? Where are they having lunch? Oh Lord, all the vendors that we've mentioned, the functionality, you know, the pop-up tents. Is it going to be hot? Is it going to be cold? Have we anticipated? My training, if there's one word that I would say the location department has to do, is anticipate everything. Because you know when you get there and you've made a plan from a tech scout, and I'm sorry because this is Locations 101, so the scouting, we get into the technical scouting before we do all of that, which is where we get all of the information and where they're supposed to tell us where the camera is looking and where the camera positions are and where they're going to put
looking,
right. And where the lights are going to be and all of that, and that's how we can build our world. But in that anticipation moment, you know that chances are you get there, they want to shift. They want to turn. Literally 2 weeks ago, I was at work, and everything they told us they weren't looking at, we parked all the trucks there, and the director got there and said, oh no, I want to see this. And there was this mad scurry of moving trucks and angry transportation folks because we had a plan, but you always try to accommodate. And so this section that we're talking about right now is supposed to be about workflow. And I know we have a whole piece on scouting. Again, I want to hand this back to them so we can talk about scouting. That's my sort of overview as to how we get to the end. But the first half is creative, and it is scouting, and there is a way to take photos, and there are ways to present those photos, and there are ways to sell or not sell a location. I know that I have this thing that we always say, well, in my movie, in my movie, I'd pick this house because I like it. I've read this script. I'd like this kind of a restaurant. But our job is not to make Allison's movie. Our job is to make the director's movie. And so we always have to step out of ourselves and have our moment in the office where we talk about what we would do, but then our job is to make someone else's movie. And so they are much better scouts than I am, at least with the photography and all of that. So I'm going to hand this back to, I don't know which one of you wants to start on the anatomy of a photo. But I'll give it to JJ.
Okay, great. So we're going to talk about scouting, and I think as a big overview, one of the things that Allison touched on is that it is how we scout, and more so how we present our images to the director or the production designer is very important. And there are a lot now of commercially available websites where you can present your photographs. Some of my favorites are SmugMug and Zenfolio. It used to be that, particularly in Los Angeles and other regions, there was one man who actually is Greek named Marino Pascal, who created for us in the early days of the internet a way for us to display our photographs and a way. Oh. I'd love to take off the mask. That makes me very happy. Thank you. So, but now the commercial world of photography. Photography, I learned recently, is the #1 hobby in the world, which I had no idea about. So this desire now, and I think particularly with people scouting with their phones and shooting with their phones, has created a whole new world for not only amateur enthusiasts, but for location people to present their photographs. And I'll just go back to how we present our photography is a reflection of us as a department, and it starts at the very beginning. It's also very important to keep a library of your photographs and to keep an organized library of your photographs, because more and more these days, and particularly really in times of COVID, we're getting asked to do what we call a file pull, which is something where for example, I'm working on a project now where we need mansions. And I was hired prior to the production designer and reporting to the executive producers. So I pulled all kinds of mansions. I pulled humongous mansions. I pulled brick mansions that look like they have columns. I pulled modern mansions. I pulled mega mansions, homes that are worth 23,000 square feet and worth $85 million to $500 million, which is like phenomenal. But it's very important to keep your library organized and labeled in a way that you can immediately produce a response, a visual response. And I speak a lot about visual language, because even with some of the things that Dan and Allison were speaking before, there's nothing like a photograph for someone to respond to and say, yes, that is what I'm looking for. That image is like indicative of the kind of scene that I want to convey. So I'll start out with that about scouting, and then I want to say that they're giving a big overview. It's very different whether you're scouting for a feature film, a television series, or a commercial. I do all, and Dan does all, and Allison does kind of all, not commercials. Allison doesn't, yeah, because commercials are so fast and they're furious and they're like a frenzied chaos. But as Dan likes to say, chaos equals cash. So, and paralleling the kind of medium, when you're scouting for a feature, you have time to develop the scene. You have time to develop the atmosphere of what you're trying to show. So you can, as a film would do, what is the drive up to the location? Is it do a sort of a leisurely scout, so to speak? Is how do we drive up to the location? Okay, what does the front door look like? And to give really a really bigger overview. Features and television are more about following the action of the script. The actor walks from this hallway to this hallway. We want to indicate all of that. We want to show all of that. Commercials are about the fast interpretation of the scene. And if you think about a commercial in itself, you have 2 seconds to essentially say, this is mom feeding cereal to the kid in the kitchen. Boom, I get what that scene is. So as a commercial television or commercial scout, what we're trying to do is immediately provide the hero image, the image that the director wants to essentially say, yeah, great, hero image, light that, that's what. And I've had many people where we never even go on a tech scout, where we never go on a director scout. They pick the locations from our scout photos, they show up and they shoot it. And, so it is important to convey that visual language immediately. And then, as I said, it's a visual medium. So when I say farm, your vision of a farm is going to be very different from my vision of a farm. That might be different from somebody from the South's vision of a farm or somebody from the UK's vision of a farm. So visual is the only real way to speak, at least in my opinion. I think, the other things as a scout, like we were touching on earlier, is that you do want to make sure that you scout with logistics in mind. Because the worst thing is running around after the scout is scouted, as Allison can well attest to, and getting to a location going, how did you think we were going to get here? How did you think we were going to bring the trucks in? I can't park my trucks for 8 miles away from here. I have nowhere to put this stuff. So I think it's important as you're scouting, and going back to even touching on the workflow, to knowing these things, to knowing what the permit restrictions are that you're going to be dealing with in the area that you're going to, so that you aren't scouting something that's impossible, because you never want to sell a location to production and the director that you can't actually deliver on. And it happens, but you want to try to avoid that situation as much as you can. Yeah, please do.
I just want to interject something really quickly. Right before this, I was supposed to start a feature film for Netflix in Chile. And this exact thing happened. The producer group went to Chile to actually pre-scout the locations that we were going to use. And they had seen things purely from photography. Got there and discovered that these locations were inaccessible. And the whole project pushed. It's now, I don't know if I'll do it, because who knows when it'll come back up, and they are currently reevaluating other places in the world because we could not actually make those locations work. As beautiful as they were, you have to bring the whole crew in on a helicopter to get to it, and there's no way you can do it. So that, I just wanted to toss that in because it's critical. It's critical about not selling things that you can't actually bring 150 people in to shoot. Sorry.
And it's amazing that happens quite often, and it happens from producers who you would think would know better, but it does happen quite often. And I'm going to turn it over to Dan for his perspective.
Yeah, thanks. When I started in the 90s, we didn't have digital cameras. Not everybody had mobile phones. And basically, you were shooting on 35mm. You would then go to Soho to get the pictures printed out. You had a buddy there who could print them out in 35 minutes if you paid him extra money. You would then go into the office and the elephant boards, you'd mount them on the big cardboard things, label them all with a Chinograph pencil. And then you would organize through the production office, when's the director, the producer, the line producer, and the production designer and the DOP going to be available in the same room? So that we can go through the boards and discuss each location. And what was valuable about that process was that we were all here like we are now going, I'm not sure about, can we paint the walls? Yeah, they're cool, we can paint the walls. What's the approach like? Yeah, look, there's the other images of the approach. Right, okay, fine. Now we don't get that luxury.
And we
The
don't get
directors
the
in,
time.
no, the directors in, we've got all this technology, but no collaborative time. So the director's in New York, the producer is trying to get some money in Hong Kong for the production. The production designer's got COVID. You're there on your own, going, please somebody tell me where you want to shoot this film, And this is the early stages, So be aware, I guess, that all this technology has to be guided and curated in the right way in order to make progress. So how you present the images. When I was doing an Apple job, and it was about a global pandemic, and then guess what? So we shut down, and we went back in dribs and drabs, just in small the production were still hiring key crew, location managers being obviously one of the key crew. And I went out there with a 360 camera and a small drone for these landscape locations because everybody was back in New York or everyone was shooting in Tokyo. And then Tokyo got hit. So we had to present stuff as best we could so that everybody could be in the moment. They couldn't drive to the location. So they were squizzing around on the 360. So I invested in like $1,000 camera, a 360 thing, just so that people could at least see these images. Production designers sometimes want to see the frame. They want to see the composition. They want to see the formality of filmmaking, which is what we love. But UPMs don't want to see that. They want to see everything because if they're going to get hit by some news, it's usually from behind where they didn't see it coming. So if you've got a 360 image, you can see all of that. If you've got a drone image that you can throw up a drone without a small one without a permit, you can at least get an overview, and everyone goes, right, I got it. I know what you're talking about now.
And sometimes production will pay for that camera too if they want it badly enough. You can.
Yeah, or you buy the camera and then hire it back as part of your box money, like $2 a day or whatever it is. So there's ways of doing it. How do you want me to approach this? What format would you like the image sharing to be on? I usually personally put everything on a Dropbox. That's where my library sits. And then I'll take those images from the Dropbox and put it in Box, or I'll put it in SmugMug, or I'll put it in Google Images, whatever they want to do. Or they might set up a secure link specific for the studio. We had one on the Apple project that obviously they wanted complete control. So we uploaded to their super secure servers, and so you have to do that in two. Which brings me on to data security. Now we're all digital. We're kind of talking about scouting here, but it's important to ask the locations, look, we're not going to distribute and market these images, but we do need to share them with like the department and beyond other departments. Are you okay with that? Yeah, I'm okay with that. Some people naively think, well, I'll let you take some pictures of my farm shop or whatever it may be. I didn't realize that people in Los Angeles will be looking at them the next day and commenting on them and sending that back. But that's why you did it. You just need to be upfront with them and transparent, Everything's become global, including how we distribute the images and how quickly that happens and how quickly they expect that to happen. You'll go out or you'll send scouts out. Within 2 days, they'll phone you or email you going, how's the scout going? We haven't seen any images. And you're like, okay, fine, give me another day, and it's a difficult location or whatever. But the speed of things now is breathtaking. So that's what they expect, and that's what we have to give them. We don't have that languid pre-production period anymore. That used to be there pre-digital. So that's one element, the technology and also the distribution of the images. And how that works. The other thing is, like, believe it or not, I had a scout who went out for me, and I said, "Can you take a picture?" "Yeah, right, okay. So this is what I want." I got the images. I said, "I can't use these. They're tilted. They're blurred. You've blown the windows out. I can't present any of these pictures. I mean, I'm going to pay you, but you need to go to a photography class to figure it out, because you're hired. Take pride in what you do. You're hired as a photographer now. So you're a kind of a pro. I know you're not, but you know, you're going to get hired to do this again and again if you're any good. So you need to invest in your own skills. So I would say, for a scout who's not sure about the technology, take a class and do all of that stuff so that at least you can get the fundamentals right. The other thing, just briefly, is how I've migrated across in the last 3 or 4 years from digital SLRs to phones. Sometimes when you're on, like in Saudi Arabia, if I turned up with a camera with a lens, a big lens on the front, and was in the street taking photographs, that's kind of not forbidden, but it's frowned upon. It's not a very good way of making yourself inconspicuous in order to get in there and take pictures. So sometimes a phone camera, especially the high-end ones, they've got excellent quality pictures. I mean, the way that these images are going to be distributed, they're never going to be printed up in this big. They're only going to be seen on an iPad or a screen of some description. They're perfectly fine so long as the composition's good, the exposure's good, the focus is good, all the principles are the same. But don't shy away from that, because it's a great technology that you can use, and you can upload them straight away, and it's done. As you're driving, your pictures are already in the library. So, you know, buy a high-end phone camera and do that if you want. Yeah. And the final thing is, specifically for rural or locations that are hard, you know, like for me, the desert was difficult, because one bit of desert looks like another bit of desert until you drill down on the detail. And then the scout would come back and said, this rock formation is unbelievably beautiful. Where is it? Yeah, it's in the desert. No, but where?
I need to get back to it.
We need to go back there.
Right.
Right, yeah, I didn't, yeah. It's about 10 miles out, and then I think it was west, or it might have been east. I don't know. And you're going, right, so I can't use that either, because we'll die in the desert looking for it. They'll just find our skeletons in 6 months' time. So using technology like What 3 Words, Google Pins, but they don't work in the desert either. Yeah. So you need to look at where you're going to scout, and then look at how you're going to document where that is. So invest in a GPS unit that will always work, so that you can data tag where you drove off-road that day. Or if you're doing, I imagine for people filming in Greece, marine work is going to figure quite strongly, because there are so many islands and sea networks. So you're going to want to know what route you took to come around a harbour, or where you were when you dropped the anchor and saw that beautiful sight. We all know when we go back to somewhere at sea, it's the same as a desert. You're like, oh no, I don't know where we are now. You know, so these are essential for part of a scouting regime. And then what I asked to do for confidentiality is that information, including the ownership of who owns what and their details, is never released to anybody apart from the department. I've had instances in the past where I've given, let's say, an art director somebody's a location owner's details, and then they've gone there and said the wrong thing at the wrong time. We didn't land on a deal yet. She didn't know, or he didn't know the context of where we were at with our negotiations. Blew it. Lost the location. You know? So keep that information secure and within your department is what I would recommend. If the line producer specifically asked for it, you have that conversation up front and say, yeah, okay, I get it, but blah, blah, blah. You know, but junior members of other departments, I don't ever give them that information. They'll get that information when they're good and ready, and I don't like to see that information on call sheets or anything. So that it always says, as per locations department. Nobody knows apart from me and the people who work in my department. So I'll leave that there.
I'm going to just touch on a couple of things about cell phones, which actually do correct a lot of the photographers who don't know how to use their camera. Cell phones are a beautiful thing because they correct, they'll give you proper lighting in low lighting situations. They will correct a lot of things. And there are programs, one of them that I like a lot is Cartage. And if you happen to know what camera is going to be used on the production, like is it a red, you can adjust on Cartage to shoot with essentially those same camera dimensions. It will simulate those camera dimensions. And I know a lot of, first of all, it makes you look really good to the DP, and it makes you look really good to the director because they're like, oh, I use Cartage. But and so they think that you're, fabulous. And so Cartage is actually an excellent program. And I want to reiterate what Dan says about being able to get back to the location, because the desert particularly and a lot of rural locations, your GPS is not going to work. The other thing is that we use a lot, and also shows off your sort of advancedness as a scout, is to do compass readings. And to be able to say, even, it's great, just literally do a 360. There's another app that I like to use called Spyglass. There's actually several apps that will overlay a compass onto your image. But the one I like that is the most basic is Spyglass, because it'll literally overlay an old-fashioned compass over your image. And so I tend to do those as the last thing I present. So it's like, here's your great location. Here's what it looks like north, south, east, west. If you can do something with Sunseeker or another app to show when the sun's going to go down, and that when and where the sun is going to go down, when and where the sun's going to rise. This is particularly in commercials. This is really important because you don't have the luxury of a feature where you're in a location for several days often to catch the sunset or to catch the sunrise, and especially given the length of the hours in between, production doesn't have that long of a day. So I think these things are very important. And then I'll add, and this is sort of going back to touching on the workflow a little bit, is that you want to know when you're scouting what your permit is going to look like, what your permit authority is, what your allowable hours are, and you don't have to know exactly where your base camp is going to be, but if you do, you're going to make yourself look great as a scout to the manager. I'll turn that back.
I just want to interject right there. So again, it's interesting the types of work that the three of us do, because I set off, Mike, that I don't do commercials, so I really don't. And so I find it really interesting because from my perspective, when I am interpreting what a scout has presented, because a lot of times that's what I'm doing. I am evaluating, I'm filtering what the scout has brought in before it gets presented to a designer or obviously to a director. And there are key questions that you always want to ask, which are, which direction is this facing? Because there is always the sun. So there are things that you do necessarily need to know what direction you're looking at. I don't have an expectation as to where a base camp is going to be early on in scouting, because in features, and you can probably speak to this, but in features we have a little bit more, if you have a proper budget and it's a proper feature, you have a little bit more of a luxury of caring about the location. I imagine that international projects coming to Greece care to be filming in Greece. And so the focus is going to be finding the perfect location. And so we may not need to know with the sense of urgency and quickness where the base camp is going to be, but we'll need to know, as I mentioned before, that it is accessible, that it is filmable. And then we're also working with wonderful people in the Film Commission and everything about the permits and all that. Will they let us film here? Have you shown us something that you've talked yourself into, but they're really not going to let a whole film crew come? And that happens, I'm sure you all have had that happen, where some great scout has found some wonderful thing, and they've convinced these people to let them come in and take the photos. But those people don't understand that when selected, the circus is coming, and we're all coming, and we're taking over. And then that becomes like, oh, no, I don't want all of you all here. So those are the key pieces in the scouting piece of this workflow for me. And
I had one thing I forgot to mention is you mentioned it before, many producers, since Google Images, thinks they're a scout. Anyone can Google something, and it's... you'll get a whole raft of images pop up, and they'll go, we want to film there, we like that image. Already, testament to what you said, they get hooked on the image straight away. I've had instances where they've Googled a stately home in the UK, and they've said, yeah, we want to go there, and I said, it's mislabeled, that's not that place.
Right. Yeah.
That's some idiot who wrote the wrong place, it's 400 miles away.
Yeah.
That's in Scotland,
It just happened to me.
or wherever. So their research is based on Google, which is an algorithm. Your research should be based on critical thinking and logic. And one of the things is Google Maps is you get out in the desert, Google Maps is a waste of time. It's just yellow. The whole map is yellow. When I first got to Saudi Arabia, as an example, I spoke to the municipality of the area that we were at, and I said, where can I get maps? In that part of the world, for many reasons, security being one of them, they don't distribute maps. The most detailed maps are military maps. So I went online and went to a map store called Stamford's in London, who are famous for maps, historic maps, brand new maps, you name it. And there was a NATO map from the first Gulf War that was made, detailing this section of northern Saudi Arabia that I guess if I'd been caught with it, I might have been in trouble, but it was I could buy it for $40, and it was a large-scale map, and the information contained on there was better than anybody knew when I got there on the ground. So I would say, no, this is Wadi al-Disa here. This Wadi here stretches 30 miles to the west. And they go, no, it doesn't. I said, it does, Habibi, look, there it is. And they would go, well, let's go drive. Lo and behold, that military map was completely accurate based on satellite images from whenever else. And it helped me when I was scouting on the film out there, because I kind of got to a borderline area, and then I saw little graphics of tanks. And as I was driving through the desert, this old farmer in a pickup truck, he's in this Toyota with his little boy. He stops and he goes, blah, 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 speaks to me in Arabic. And I said, Mushkila, is there a problem? And he's saying, yeah, don't go there. Don't go there. And I said, why? Next thing, there's a tank range, and the shells are going, like firing live rounds across everyone's head. These are, I guess the Greek military have got installations all over the place as well, that an unwitting scout might drive into that district and then go, yeah, we can film there. And then you go, well, actually, we've got a NATO operation that month. You can't do anything there. That's absolutely forbidden. There's no airspace, no drone shooting, no helicopters, no nothing. So that's part of the scout as well. Is I'm a bit of a map junkie. I love maps. They're like novels to me. The historic maps tell me, I can read into them stuff. So I invest in buying them for my own interest. But I don't know whether such a thing exists in Greece, that you have these paper maps that are highly detailed with information. Like in the UK, we have ordnance survey maps, which were basically like originally military maps that then that information was given to the general public. We use those, they're still great. And you also can orientate, you intuit where north, west, east, and south is if you know where you are on the map rather than on Google Maps, because Google Maps just gives you this, doesn't give you this. So anyway, I'll leave it there.
I think Dan actually touched on a really good point, which is that we, as scouts, are often sort of trespassers, and we, because we're explorers, really. I mean, this is a lot of why we got into this job. So we do have a tendency to go, oh, what's over there, and what's over there, and oh, that sign that says keep out. It doesn't mean me.
No, we're a big deal. We're allowed.
Yeah, right, exactly. We have what they call cinematic immunity a lot of times. Like, oh no, it's okay if we just cross that line. But
we used
in
to
your
joke.
case in the desert,
we used to joke that
danger.
the location will always be found in the fold on the map. Right. You missed it. It was in the fold when you folded it. It was right there.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one of the things Allison is going to address is the skill set and the profile of a location manager and personality. And I want to remind everybody that tomorrow we're going to drill a little deeper into locations as well. But I think that is, one of those aspects being the cultural sensitivities of where you are, and knowing that if you do trespass, that you might get hit by a missile. So Allison, I'll let you take it away.
When we had a conversation about the skill set, and it was like, what do they mean by that? And I said, I know exactly what they mean, because those of us that do locations are sort of this unique individual. I had a transportation guy in Georgia tell me that he would not get up out of the electric chair to do my job. He said, I'd tell him, go ahead and flip the switch. And I thought that was so funny. How many people tell us all the time, I would never do your job. Once they actually know what our job is, all the other departments say, I would never do your job. And for us, though, we think it's the greatest job in the world. Like, we are built for this. There is a specific skill set that all of us share that makes us uniquely perfect for the job of location manager and location scout. And I was very excited to sort of touch on to that, because our job is to live right on the line between the real world and the movie world, and to be able to navigate both hemispheres of that very, very well. Because the rest of the folks, and for those of you who are in here who are not location people, don't get offended when I say this, but for the rest of the people making the movie, they live in this bubble like that. Everything is a movie set. They forget to look when they stand out in the middle of the street, because they feel like we own all of this. We're making a movie. And it's our job to say, well, actually, we don't own all of this. And actually, those people over there don't care anything about our movie. They are living their regular lives right now. Or when we talked about last night at dinner, how sometimes people think we can just get any location by throwing money at it. And sometimes, or maybe that was breakfast, but sometimes there's not enough money in the world. Sometimes that lady just does not want to be bothered with us, and no, we can't film on her property, and no, we can't put our catering truck over there, and no, you can't even sit on her property. She's watching her stories right now, and she doesn't want to be bothered with you. I was talking about working with a big hamburger company in L.A., Tommy's Burgers, and I'm dealing with the vice president of operations, and he said to me, we're in the hamburger business. Like, I'll try to help you out, but we don't make movies, we make hamburgers. And so his priority was that, not us. And so we always have to remember that, and nobody else does. And it's a unique thing. So we come with this tough skin, but we also come with this need to make everybody happy and to remember the people in the real world. We need to remember when we're filming at an airport that there are people at the airport trying to catch a plane. They don't care. They don't want to be held up by us. They want to catch their plane. They are in the real world. And I think that makes us really, really special people because we walk that line. But we also are logistical people. We also have an event planning skill set. Every location is an event. If you look at it like that, I tell people that all the time, that if you look at each location, we have just planned a major event just to get that one location done. We've done the negotiations. We've done the permit. We've hired the police and the security. We've figured out the parking. We've figured out every location is an event. So we are, in fact, event planners. But in the first half, we're these creative people. We are filmmakers. We are adapting a script to find the perfect options to present. So we are filmmakers and creatives, and then we're event planners, and then we're major negotiators, and we are keeping peace with merchants and residents and everybody. I think that we get labeled like the people who have to make sure the porto is working. But when you look at what we're really out there doing, we are really doing wonderful things, and we have opportunities to go meet people and get stories. The negotiation process to get locations can take hours or days, multiple meetings, and you've built a whole relationship with somebody just to get the deal done.
To park one car.
You've learned all about their family histories. Lord have mercy. You've gotten recipes. You've done what you need to do to make it happen. And I think that makes us a really, really special piece of the filmmaking process, even though most people in the real world don't know our job exists. They don't teach it at film school, none of that. And so I'm really proud, actually, to be a location manager. It's the only job I've done in film for 25 years. But I think it's a really, really special skill set. And the one other thing I want to say, and Dan touched on it, is that really the thick skin. You can't get upset. You have to be able to manage people and time and money and stay cool as a cucumber through the whole process.
I've had people drag me by the shirt into houses and threaten me physically. And, the conflict resolution and diplomacy and with crew members as well, there's also this. These are all the things that, diplomacy is so important as part of what we do. We often, you've done a good job if another location manager on a different film can come in and film in that location after you've gone and go, yeah, Alison was here, it was cool, everything was cool. This is what she did. Can you do the same? And then when that incoming location manager, if he's got any sense, he'll listen and go, wow, Alison really did a good job there. I guess I've got to do the same or better, rather than, because you'll get found out. So the LMGI, for instance, is about driving up those standards so that other people can continue to go back to the locations. There's situations where, let's say in Greece, on a small island, there's a crew, you could have a US feature with a crew of 150, 250 people, local extras, local tradesmen, this, that, and the other. You've got to make sure everyone gets paid. You've got to make sure that the environmental impact statements are written so that there's nothing wrong with the marine life or the natural environment. There's no spillages out at sea. There's a whole load of things that you need to consider so that when you leave that place, no one can point the finger at you and say, the crew drove into the wrong area and killed a load of wild animals, or they sawed down a tree, or more importantly, the sea is so important in this country. Marine pollution is massive. Plastics, crew plastics. When we're in a small environment, we're like a small city. We generate so much waste. We generate so much wastage, that needs to be coordinated as well. And you need to finish and leave the location with everything cool. So, it's that and the social impact, with regards to cultural sensitivities. If you're filming in a monastery in the north, do you sit down with the chief priest of that Orthodox church and discuss the content that's in the script? Because that could be an issue later down the line. And not just the content contained within those segments of the script, but the whole script, to say, well, actually, there's a sex scene immediately after the monastery scene. Do you have an opinion about that? Of course he does, So you can't go into anything like closing your eyes and throwing the dart at the board and hoping you're going to get a bullseye. It's never going to work. You have to offer context, give people the chance to pull out or sign up, and that's important too. That's part of the housekeeping. That's the same as clearing the plastics off the beach that the crew left behind. It's the same thing. It's just a cultural version of the same thing, and that's me.
And I think just one of the things is we all, like even Allison and Dan, and this is the first time that Allison and I have met Dan in person, was yesterday. And we love to tell stories about our excursions to various places and hear about how different people do things. And I often, for example, in Los Angeles and really everywhere, there's a lot of like what Dan is talking about, where if I know Allison has been to a certain home or a certain location or worked at Tommy Burger, I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call Allison and I'm going to say, hey, when you were at Tommy Burger, where did you guys park and what did you do and who do I need to look out for? And at the end of the day, the other thing is this is our profession. So we want to be able to come back to this location with another film crew and another project. And it's important to us that we don't blow through locations. I can tell you that in Los Angeles, there is a very large, crazy TV series that's filming that blazes a trail, and not a good one, often through locations. And help us if we come into that location after they have been there, because their solution, they're very chaotic, and their solution, as Allison said, is often to just throw money at the problem and throw money at people after the fact. And people don't like that. Nobody likes to be trod on to get our job done. And for us as professionals, it's very important that we are able to manage our reputations so that people on both sides of the fences, as Allison says, the public who we're dealing with and the production, are able to come back to us and say, Allison managed that location and that was a super challenging location and she got it done. And I think last night, I don't know if it's time yet, we're talking about a story of something that she did in Atlanta that was a very challenging scenario. And we thought we would sort of close out with that and then get to a Q&A.
Yeah.
We were talking last night. I was doing a project in Savannah, Georgia, and it was the Underground Railroad that came out on Amazon last month, 2 months ago, based on a really wonderful book, by the way. Anyway, we needed to film. We wanted to film in front of City Hall. We wanted to turn City Hall into one of our major locations for that episode 2. And this is a period piece, and City Hall sits on a major, the main street that runs through Savannah at a T intersection. And we wanted to close that street and the intersecting street and dirt the whole thing and put horses and period people and all this. And they kept telling me, we never shut that street down. We never closed this street. And so in the process of me begging for months anyway, it turned out they shut that street down for a parade one day. So I went back and I said, oh, you shut it down for the parade, so we know it can be shut down. So now let's talk about the parameters. And so beating on the door, and with the help of the Film Commission, by the way, I want to point that out. But anyway, we came up with this agreement that they would let us shut it down and dirt it until noon on this Sunday. And then I begged for 2 hours more to get, and I begged in advance, and that's important because begging is part of our job. But you want to beg up front. You want to get as much as you can get up front, because what the movie business is known for is begging in the moment and extending beyond what you promised. And so I didn't want to say, sure, I can do it by 12, and then at 12 o'clock beg for 2. So we made an arrangement, got it for 2 o'clock, and it was a really, really big deal because I had promised that the dirt would be up by 2. So I worked with the first AD, who assured me that she could get us off the street by 12. And so, and I don't know here in Greece if you've had to do things where you put a bunch of dirt on the street. I don't know about the period, but I'm assuming. And so, it takes a minute to get that up. So we had the machines on standby. We had everybody. And everybody was watching because this was the first time they were letting this happen. And they were saying to us, you movie people always say you're going to do this. I know you're not going to be off the street by 2 o'clock. And I was committed that, yes, we are, because I felt that I held the future of getting that closure in Savannah in my hands. And long story short, again, critical that the first AD was on the team with me because she got us off the street by 12. We had the standby guys with the dirt machines to clean it all up. And literally there was a big clock tower. This couldn't be more perfect. There's a clock tower up there. And at 2 o'clock exactly, and I mean, we took it right to that minute, the first car drove down that street, and we got a photo with the car under that clock driving down the street. But then I found out that in Savannah, they have a huge St. Patrick's Day parade every year. It's the second largest parade in the country, in the U.S., behind New York. And so they have all these bunkers around town where the traffic people go and watch, and they watch cameras because of these big events. So the people literally were in the bunkers that day watching with the expectation that we would fail, and they were watching. And so right when the car came through at 2 o'clock, the traffic control guy down in the bunker sent a screenshot from the camera to the city person that was out on the street with me and texted her the photo and said, go over there and shake Allison's hand. They did it. And that was a really, really big deal for me because now it was like, and the film commissioner was out there like, yes, because now when I come ask for this for the next company, but that's to Dan's point about it is critical that we think about the people that come after us when we are filming for ourselves, because we know we want to get it done for ourselves, but we are really carrying a load for the next people. And when you throw too much money at something too, you got to be careful about that, because now they've said, well, the last company that came through here paid us this. You're blowing it. Like you can't afford to do that all the time. So that was the story we were talking about last night, and I'm still over here glowing because I was really proud of that.
And it was a great story. And I also want to add, because when Allison was telling this story last night, in the middle of all this, as much as the AD was on your team, they moved inside and were filming inside. And the AD over the walkie comes, can you stop the work outside in order to because we're having a problem with sound inside on this dialogue. And Allison had to run back in there and say, we can't stop this work because what we promised we're going to deliver on. So even with the AD fully on their team, everybody gets caught up in getting their own job done.
Yeah.
The ADs get caught up in making the day, the grip department gets caught up in making their day, and that's why we are always on there with our watchful eyes and our watchful ears to make sure that we can truly deliver what we promise.
Because it can be myopic, once the crew are looking down a lens, that's all they're seeing, and sometimes a sound recordist will only hear a sound when he can see where it's coming from. So I know that makes no sense, but it's kind of true from experience, is that unless he sees the sound of the lawnmower or the boat, he might not even register it. And it's only when he sees it, he goes, can somebody in locations tell that boat to stop making that noise? And I always say, see these? He's about 60 miles away, or I don't know, 20 miles away or something. And see these hands, not wands. I can't just magic that thing, But I think the takeaway is the word sustainability with regards to locations. Often I've found that film commissions, in their eagerness to help, will try to work really hard to say yes all the time to as much as you can. I kind of go back to them and say, don't say yes straight away. Please don't say yes, because a yes can be a no and a no can be a yes. It's just a matter of time, So we'll talk about this more tomorrow, about hard no's and soft no's, hard yeses and soft yeses. Everything is a game of snakes and ladders in locations. And we have a saying in England, you're not on the job until you've got the bacon sandwich in your hand. You know what I mean? Until you're all stood there and the camera's out on the truck, and even then, that can change. But the sustainability is so important with regards to the relationships we have with film commissions, because often some film commissioners, there's a phrase we use, poacher turned gamekeeper, Somebody who used to be in locations has migrated across into the commission element, but they know the poacher's rules as well. They know all the tricks, so you can't get anything past them. You can't lie to them because they've done all that lying themselves for donkey's years. So, but some commissioners don't have that level of experience, and they're coming from a touristical background where there are a government department that has been given this role. If you go to smaller areas, there isn't a film commission, there isn't a film officer for that region. You kind of get given the tourism person, and they might only ever do ice cream van permits on the harbour. They might never do 300 crew and helicopter permits and blah, blah, blah. So in their eagerness to help, because they're excited about the project, I can't believe we've got this big project and we might get film tourism coming from this afterwards, and it's fantastic. I say, just be cautious. Don't say yes to everything, because I'll explain to you exactly what's going to happen. And it might be not sustainable for you long term, next time round. So that's an important point to make as well. So.
Before we get into the Q&A, I wanted to speak super briefly on the LMGI. And we were waiting for some literature to arrive, but we do have some copies of the Compass magazine and some other literature, some brochures. And I will say that I've been involved with the LMGI since almost the very beginning, almost. And we were a Los Angeles-based group. And the LMGI started with people essentially saying, hey, let's get together, let's learn, because location managing and location scouting can be a very solitary career. And especially when I first got into managing and scouting, I just was winging it, really, and I had no one to turn to as a mentor. I didn't really know anyone. And a friend of mine said, you should join the LMGI, and I joined the LMGI, and it was fantastic in terms of, like, as Dan and I were saying last night, I was like, I found my people, right? Over the ensuing years, we started the awards, we became a global organization, and that has extended globally, and it's these events that we're doing, the Coffee Tuesdays, it's been incredibly fantastic to get to know everybody and to be able to share these stories and share information and how we tackled situations on a global level. And we do educational Zoom calls that are really more like fun and friendly. We have covered topics like aerial cinematography, drone work, difficult extreme locations. But I think the biggest thing is that we are truly creating a global community of location scouts and managers, and it is really incredible to be among your people. And with that, I think we'll turn it over to a Q&A. And maybe, Vanya, do you want to take this mic and we're so we're open for questions.
Do you need?
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Very interesting. What we've heard here are amazing. My name is Aris. As a matter of fact, I'm from the hospitality field, and we're hosting the big production just across. What I wanted to ask you about the libraries that you mentioned. Do you think that it would be helpful if a region or a municipality create like a library that has the specific elements, like how you can place the trails and how the depth of the scenes and stuff like that? Would that be really helpful for people like you? Do you find it in other locations?
Yeah, I think any information is good. I think what I've seen over the years, which is quite good, is the initial. Are you talking web content, like a website?
Exactly,
Yeah.
like a website or like a library that you can
Yeah.
you can have access as a location manager and have
Yeah.
the specific information that that you want to take.
I think it's definitely worthwhile, but I think what works better is to have an initial simple format, and then you drill down into the detail with subsequent, information that might be required. So this is the lagoon near the cave, blah, 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 some reference material on this, and then any more information, please get in touch on, because every single film is so unique in its demands and in its information that you have to make your approach more generic in order to cover the, but then you'll get hit with a million questions after that,
Yeah, because in Greece, I mean, the last like 10 years, lots of islands and municipalities and regions are doing this kind of photographies. I mean, they're hiring photographers, and they're doing like photographs for the destination.
Yeah.
In reference to the destination marketing part.
Yeah.
So I think that it would be very interesting for you guys to have such information from hospitality guys,
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
also, sorry, I was just going to say, UPMs sometimes say to me, can you check out the hotels, the graded hotels? Where are we going to put the number one? Where are we going to put the guys that do the catering and everything in between? So often when we're in a location, we sometimes get tasked with the accommodation finding until the production team get there and do the deals. So I'll be speaking to hotel, like in Saudi Arabia, I was the guy that went to the first 5-star hotel, a Millennium Hotel in the north, and said, we need to buy out the whole hotel. How much is it going to cost?
I already have this experience because we've done dozens of Zoom calls with Los Angeles during winter to book this.
So you know it. Yeah. So I'll be then photographing the suites, photographing the pools, the gyms, the restaurant, getting the menus, what can you do, and then just send that over and say, this is the general overview of that hotel, and then there's these apartment buildings or whatever. So
I see.
Yeah.
Something else that I wanted to ask. At the beginning, you said about the organizational chart of a location manager department. Okay. Is this often, I mean, does it vary according to productions? I mean, does it have to be so clear and, and because you said about the location manager, the assistant, blah, 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 blah. This happens to all productions, or it depends on how big the production is?
Allison's going to answer that.
It actually is pretty consistent. If you are talking about a small non-union thing, then it's, it could be anything. But for studio projects, whatever studio it is, you are going to have a consistent system within the location department. So you are going to have a location manager and then assistant location managers. You might have multiple, to her point, like we'll work as a supervising location manager when there's other managers on the show. And then sometimes there's location assistants or a unit manager. But in the world, pretty internationally, those are the people: the location manager, unit manager, assistant location manager, and that is the structure of our department. And the film business is very hierarchical. Like there is a hierarchy that gets followed. There are department heads, and then there is a system, and we communicate. It's kind of amazing. It's kind of like the military, because you don't go talk to somebody else. Like if I need to talk to transportation, if I need a truck move, I don't just go tell that driver to move it. I'm going to tell the captain to tell the driver to move it. So we are pretty solid in the system. I
mean, interestingly, to pick up on that, whenever I've dealt with the British Army and other army, the Emirati army and people like that, it's amazing how we find the synergies so quickly between the film hierarchy and the military hierarchy. So you'll sit there with a brigadier or a general to discuss how to do the schedule. I mean, I remember sitting in a meeting in Abu Dhabi with a brigadier, asking him for, we were all there, 25 people, and the production were asking him for Chinooks, asking him for Humvees, asking him for Black Hawks, asking him for men, material, logistics, fuel, blah, to make the movie. And the brigadier was given a one-line schedule, movie magic, EP. He'd never seen an EP schedule before. It's a one-liner. He's looking at it like this, listening, talking, listening, yeah, okay, yeah, we can do that. And he's going through it all, yeah. And then he goes, okay, yeah, we're good. Just one thing, Wednesday the 25th, you're never going to complete that day. And I looked around at the production manager and was like, is this guy a producer? And that is the military mind interpreting a schedule that he's never seen before and figuring out men, materials, time, money, distances, etc. It's exactly the same. So he figured it out and he'd never seen it before. And I was thinking, if we ever went to war, I want this guy to be in control. You know what I mean? And people use the analogy that going to making a movie is like going to war. You shoot, you cut, everything's staccato, everything's violent, everything's stop, start, stop. We call it, the film business, we call hurry up, wait a minute. It's like, where is it? Come on, where's the stuff? We need it now, we don't need it anymore. Right? That's the way it is.
One of my favorite cartoons is a group of people around a surgical operating table. They're doing brain surgery, and the caption is the doctor saying, hey, don't worry about it. It's not like we're making a movie. So, it's like, which we always say, well, it's not brain surgery, so they're saying the opposite to us too. But I think, also just to jump in on what Dan was saying, that we are sort of chameleons. And so the military does, when they love us because we are militaristic. But I think that's going back to the skill set. One of the great skill sets of location managers is to sort of vibe with whoever you're talking about. So if you're going, and as explorers, we kind of like to do that. So if we're going into a foundry that's making sculptures, we're fascinated by that process, and we sort of become as much like those people as we can. And I always find that that's a great skill to have is to try to see what that culture is that you're going into and meld yourself into that culture so that you can be successful and you can sort of speak with those people as though you're one of them. And that, for me, has always been one of the keys to getting, achieving what we want to achieve.
It's establishing a rapport within 5 seconds. You know, that's how long you've got. You know, you're kind of salesman in a way, but
So
not.
what you do is amazing. I mean, because you have to combine basically the artistic part with the reality, as you said before, and you have a director and a guy that he has imagined something specific, and then you have to bring it in reality. I think this is the basic challenge of your job.
I used the example last night over supper, doing a sci-fi show, and I'm reading the script, going through some stuff, and one of the stage directions says, we go through a time portal, right? Everyone knows what a time portal is, kind of, right? And then we open up on the interior of a chamber. It's made of a material not yet invented. And it's a color that we don't have a name for yet. Right? And we've got to find it.
And easily burn your brain cells with this job. You burn them. You burn your brain cells.
But I'm using this as an example to say how we have to do real left field and real right field brain functioning. And not many people can do that. You know, production accountants are excellent at what they do, but that's because they do a certain type of thinking. Fixed thinking will never get you anywhere in a location department because it's a moving target all the time. So I said to the production designer, hey, yeah, I'm just reading this bit of the script here. It's a bit of a head scratcher, I've got to be honest. I mean, could it be made out of a squid membrane? Like the walls are made out of a membrane of a squid that pulsates different colors. He said, yeah, that's exactly what we were thinking. We were thinking it was a squid, like a squid house. So another thing you need to be careful of is people stealing your ideas and having the ego to suck it up and go, I've witnessed conversations in the car where somebody else has taken the credit for my idea, and then the director is going, you know, you really pulled it out of the bag today. And it's like, no, I'm driving a car. I go, no, I did. Me.
Yeah.
So, but you can't do that. It's disingenuous. It's not professional. You just have to suck it up and then carry on, you know.
And the designer always takes the credit. Other questions?
Hi to everyone. I want to thank everyone for organizing this event. Thanks to the people for the festival, to George, to Venya, to Bobby. Thanks to everyone, and thanks to you guys for coming along. My name is Vasilis. I am a freelancer, line producer, production manager, and location manager. Won Best Location Manager of the Year. So I'm really passionate and happy about my job. Thank you. So I have a couple of questions about you guys. My first question is actually two types of questions. Is there a specific software that people in the industry use for doing location managing? And I mean kind of software like a specific form of budget. Is there a specific, because every single time we have to form our own budgets, or you know what I mean? Is there anything ready, paid, like from Movie Magic or something like that, that has everything put together, like a nice formula for a location manager budget?
Well, the only one that I've seen, and I've seen every variety of budget, and my basic answer is no. But the Marino Pascal, who hosts these websites, which is locations.org for displaying your photo, when you, and I think it's still viable, when you purchase the monthly website from Marino, he has created a budget format that is in FileMaker Pro. The driver of that behind it is FileMaker Pro. other than that, I use Excel. I use a different format than everybody
I don't
else
use
uses.
Marino at all. I don't use anything that he makes. So
Yeah.
I come from a whole different place. And like JJ said, really, no. So Movie Magic, has their budgeting, their location budget. It sucks, but
Yeah, I know.
yeah, but the accountants use it, interestingly enough. So they take all these various formats that we give them, and they merge it into that system. I purchased it thinking, I'll just do it, the Movie Magic, but I don't like it because it doesn't give the detail.
Yeah.
But I will tell you there, and probably you can email me, because there's a class in our union in LA. They teach a budgeting class, and they sort of hand out several various templates. And I think we all kind of have to use what works for us where, because it's not across the board like that. Like, for instance, I like to break down the police and security stuff, because those all add up differently.
Yeah.
And so I built my own, or I had
That's
somebody
what I
build
do
it
as
for
well.
me.
Yeah.
But there's no like one standard system that everybody
And do
uses.
you, Allison, do you break down, like when you're talking about breaking down police and security, do you also break out specifically overtime hours, or do you just ballpark that?
You mean for police and
For
security?
police and security, or for
I-
anybody that's on that we're paying a fire, or anybody that we're
Right.
paying.
I don't break out their overtime hours, but I break out, I'll put in a daily cost, like a FSO, a fire safety officer. I'll calculate, say, the 15-hour day.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with security. So I'll put that overtime in it,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't take all those additional lines to say aid at this. But I'll show what the total calculation is, whether it's an 8-hour day or a 15-hour day. I tend to use 15 on FSOs, and I tend to use 15 on like the security gaffer, 12 hours on a regular security, that sort of thing.
And then you count the overtime.
Yeah, so I calculate it in there, and I come up with a day rate.
Yeah.
So I can put it in, because you also don't want we need the detail to calculate the budget,
Yeah.
but when you're turning it in, you don't want it, they don't need to see all that.
No.
They need to see your bottom numbers,
Yeah.
but they don't need to see the breakout of the calculation.
No, but you
So-
need to know.
But you need to know. So you don't want your budget to be 2 pages for one location. You want to try to keep it to a page, and so you're trying to fine-tune that stuff.
So I pad the hours, actually. I use, because you're doing a formula, right? So if I am formulating let's say a policeman for 10 hours, then I might put, and I know it's going to be a 10, then I might put 15 in. Well, I pad, but I also pad to know that they go into overtime at 8 hours. So I pad my number of hours, figuring I'll get pretty close to an actual number.
The other thing we talked about this morning was the difference when you do multiple versions of budgets from the beginning to the end, and then you post when you finish. But there's a difference between going over budget and an agreed overage with regards to...
Agreed overage?
Yeah. So if something changes from when you did your first 2 budget drafts.
Or your tech scout.
Yeah, or the tax gap.
yeah.
Let's say the parking is way more.
It always
or whatever.
changes.
Yeah.
Always.
Always changes. So you have to go there and say, right, we agreed that it's $20,000 for this location, but we now know, because the art department needs to get in there for an extra week, it's going to be $30,000.
For prep.
That's over budget based on the budget I submitted in good faith.
Exactly.
So therefore, we need to now change that budget. However you want to register it, whether it's an overage, it's not over budget in the sense that your budget wasn't enough. It's your budget. It's your money. I'm just managing my element of it. So therefore, sometimes a line producer will say, your budget, meaning my department, and it's like, it's our money to spend on this movie,
Yeah.
Like, how do we save money is often a phrase. and I say, I don't know, we're making a film, we're spending money. You can't save money, not buy a piggy bank, you know.
I've been in both sides, so I know exactly what you mean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's where we spend the money.
Yeah.
Is it in vision, or is it going to get spent on catering?
But
I don't know.
We all raised a good point, which is, so you go on a tech scout, right? And like Allison said, they tell you, we're looking this way. We're never going to see this behind us. And now all of a sudden, you're going to see that behind us. So now you got to find somewhere to throw your trucks and throw some money at that situation, and you're going to go over. So that's, I think,
that's an agreed overage.
I say,
yeah, that's an
You
agreed
agree
overage.
it right there.
It's an email that says budget alert.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. By the way, I have a motto so that everybody that works with me knows, and I put signs all over the room, but it says, put it in writing. Put it in writing. I don't care what the circumstance. Nowadays, I'm old, all this texting, I hate all these conversations. I can't negotiate on a text, but a conversation on the phone, a conversation, anything, is a follow-up email. And a follow-up email just say, hey, just reconfirming. But the same thing with the budget overage. It's like, budget alert. By the way, per our conversation earlier today, this is going to be, but I just want to say, put it in writing, by the way. It is this business, like he's talking about somebody stealing your idea.
Yeah.
This business, people get selective amnesia.
Yeah.
And you can say, but I told you you had to be out by 3. Well, if it's not in writing someplace, you didn't tell them.
Yeah.
So that's my
Because I've
thing.
been through more than 100 budget formulas, and I've never found the exact location. Every time I've had to make my own location budget, and I
25 years, and I still adjust that budget template. I still can't find the one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. My next question is about specific software apart from the budget that helps location managers. Is there any specific software that helps with, scheduling, floor plans, stuff like that?
There's so many apps and so many things.
If there's anything you use,
I'm going to tell you what I use for communication on set. I use Slack.
Slack.
And I love it.
I use
it has
Slack a
really
lot.
changed the Slack for my whole department. What else do we use?
I haven't. In Los Angeles, there was a security company that got into creating an app, and it just never. It sounds like a great idea, and you get really enthusiastic about it. And it was meant to be able to schedule your vendors for when your porta potties are going to arrive, and who's this vendor and who's that vendor. And honestly, I found it never really works. It's never really practical. And the best thing is if you can get a person to be a coordinator in your department, to be sort of like what I said earlier, the hub of the wheel. That is way better than any software, because it's so malleable what we do. It's always changing and it's always mutating that then to try to keep up on the software on top of actually doing the job is almost impossible.
I created a whole thing.
What do you mean?
It's files and files, but I didn't have anybody who could build it.
In Excel, you mean?
No. I did a total brain dump for months out of my head, and I really mapped out the perfect software that location managers could have.
So you have it for your own now?
But I needed somebody to build it, and I was like, I'm a location manager. I don't know how to build a program.
I see.
But it is exactly what you're talking about.
Is what I mean.
Sort of thing that I wanted to include, even those follow-up letters. You know how you scout and then you leave people hanging sometime because you're moving fast and you have to try to remember to go back to those people to say thank you so much, but we didn't. We've gone another direction. We selected something else. All of that, but it's just it's so big. To JJ's point, it's so big, and
workflow formula. That's what I mean. Yeah.
I mean, on the day, I'll sometimes set up multiple WhatsApp groups. So if I've got 20 marshals. They'll be on my marshals WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
And I'm like the Wizard of Oz at the top, like controlling that thing. And then it'll be my traffic management and the cops and whoever it is. I'll get the phone numbers of the cops and whatever. So I sometimes teach my unit managers or ALMs, more likely, step back. Once the unit's in, find almost, it doesn't have to literally be an elevated position, but step back now that they're filming and anticipate what's next. See what's happening on the street. Anticipate, right, there's a religious festival, we just found out, we didn't do our homework, this is a major problem, you know, they're going to like be nearby making, there's a political demonstration, you know, that's happening around the corner, it's going to be a problem for security, we need more security, or whatever it was. You know, there's a lot of that in the UK at the moment, impromptu events that happen, COVID demonstrations, you name it. So my COVID people, not mine, but the production's COVID coordinators, you know, need to know what we've put in place for them to do their job, because they have to be there, guess what, before we are sometimes now to set up their COVID.
Right.
But then, because they can't, we have to be there first. So, like, you know, things like that, you've got multiple WhatsApp groups.
Yeah, that's what
triaging what you need to do across the course of the day, you
Okay.
know, and everybody should respond, you know, instantly. And then it's a kind of way, without clogging the walkies up, it's a kind of way that we can do stuff. And often third-party suppliers don't always get walkie-talkies. The cops sometimes don't want them, you know, all of that stuff. They're not film unit people, but we've hired them, you know, to do stuff. So they're my unit, they're not the film unit, you know. So
I've got 3 more questions. Sorry for so many questions. So I stop now.
Are you coming tomorrow?
Depends how
We can.
you want to go on with more and then.
yeah, finish the questions.
We can. I think we could do a couple more questions and then wrap it up.
But we will continue tomorrow.
Okay.
It's a nice and very interesting. Ask 1 or 2 questions.
Just want to ask everyone to know if everybody here is attending tomorrow, because we would like to know if you are all coming back.
Okay, I'll go through really quickly. Some applications for location managers. Map-Pick, I know, Sunseeker, Spyglass, Cartridge. Any other applications that you would recommend?
I mean, one of the things we talked about in our Coffee Tuesdays was we had some guys in from Matterport. And
Which one?
Matterport. And it was especially pertinent in the heavy period of COVID lockdown, where we would do Matterport surveys, and then we would get a complete doll's house of, you could do a Matterport of this institute and fly through every room, you know, and have measuring tools, photographs, doll's house, 3D renders, plans. I mean, it's more of a art, it's helpful for locations, art department, and like electricians mainly, I think. But it's worth investigating Matterport. It can be a little bit expensive if you have multiple things, files in there. So you sometimes have to do it project to project and take off certain locations from the server and put new ones on, so you don't overuse the hosting capability of the server. And it can be done with any 3D camera or even just an iPhone, you know. So, and it allows you to fly through locations. Whoa. So that was an interesting one. It's I don't know whether it's still demanded as much. We tried it out, and it seems to be popular with certain people.
Would you say a phone, a drone, a 360 camera, and a camera is a good kit for a scouter? That's what you need, yeah?
Yeah, it's an excellent kit.
Yeah. Okay. And one final question. It seems that structure, composure, and management and filtering are key features in this kind of job. Are there any kind of advice for the above?
What was it?
Say that again.
Yeah. It seems that structure, composure, management, and filtering are the key features in this kind of job. Are there any kind of advice for the above?
I think breathe. Breathe. take a step back. I mean, we get confronted a lot. I don't know, I don't know if that happens here, but certainly in Los Angeles, and I'm sure in the UK, we get a lot of really aggressive people coming at us, and it can range from a business owner, it could range from even a homeowner that we're working with.
Even our film crew.
Right?
Yeah.
And I think that, the biggest thing is perspective and being able, that sort of crisis management and conflict resolution skills to be able, and believe me, I think we're all vulnerable to that, but to be able to really take a step back and listen to where they're coming from and see it, try, if you can, even though their perspective may be completely off kilter. I personally find that most people want to be heard. They want to be acknowledged and they want to be heard. And if you can sit on your hands and your mouth long enough to allow them to get it out of their system and tell you all of the issues that they're contending with, and then you can say, okay, let's figure out how we're going to resolve this together.
I've had situations where at the top of the day there's been a store owner or a resident who's gone absolutely ballistic, and the crew don't even want to look. They're like, everyone steps back and you're suddenly the one, well, you would be anyway, but they're like, I'm glad I don't have his job, And then by the end of the day, you're having a beer with the guy, right?
Yeah.
And, this is how the gentle approach can work. I'm okay, you're okay. Conflict resolution. Bullying. I've seen departments bullied by producers or line producers, or department members bullied on set. It's never happened with me or anyone who works with my department. But part of that is because I know my job, and I know when I'm right and when I'm wrong, and I know what's expected of me. And this is feeding back into the LMGI standards thing, is if you goofed up, if you were goofing around and you didn't get it right, fair play, I made a mistake. But sometimes department members don't exactly know their job, and that gives other people an opportunity to find a weakness and then go, right, that standby prop guy, I'm going to bully him for the rest of this shoot because I'm just annoyed. I had a line producer try to bully me. I put a sign outside my office door saying, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Right? I needed her to know I knew exactly what she was about. And she couldn't do it because we knew already that we were transparent, the lies and, believe me, it happens, right? You probably, the secret conversations, all of this stuff, it's divisive. People siloing information away from you so that you don't find stuff out. Then you have to silo because they never told you and you never told them. It's not how you create a film. It just can't work like that. So
they spoke to composure. I would say from your list, it's really important on the management side to be organized and to anticipate everything that could possibly change or happen, and not even just from the whimsicalness of a director, but just from other things, just sort of knowing what are they going to need, what's the permit office going to need, that sort of thing, and then and again put it in writing. I live by put it in writing because and then the interdepartmental communication is also critical. You have to know what the other departments are thinking and how much time they need. All of that, as much pre-communication as possible, makes the process smoother, I think. Pre-production, if you use pre-production properly, I've seen people not use pre-production. They think it's free time,
Yeah.
and then they are not ready.
But you're in a unique position because you know every department's job, because you have to. Because if you don't, you're going to get punished. They don't know your job, you know their job. That's why so many location managers migrate to UPM, PM, so, you know.
I would say too, you know, as a, like speaking further to what Allison was saying is I tell my keys and assistants, you know, do you know, for example, do you know what the grips are going to do there? And they're like, oh, I don't know what the grips are going to do there. And I'm like, well, pick up the phone, call the grips, go or walk down the hall and go into their office and find out what their plans are, because their plans change a lot too. And so, you know, and don't just do it once, do it twice. You know, we have to manage expectations and we have to deliver, because I mean, how many times have you heard, like you were saying last night, you know, you get a call from production saying, so where's the best place to drop the condor? I'm like,
what condor?
What condor? Yeah. You know, nobody said there was a condor coming. When is it getting dropped off? And what were you know, and it never, that info never comes to you. You have to go get it. So I you know, I do, and I have my department reach out to every department and say, what are your needs on this location, so that we can anticipate and make those last minute changes.
I'll do a what 3 words on where something's going to be. So if the condor is here, I'll go, right, everybody, I'm going to do a what 3 words right here, accurate to within 12 feet. This is where we're saying it is. Condor is here. It's 1/4 mile away on the day. And it's like, well, no, do you remember? We said it was here. So we're not doing it to be difficult. We're doing it to be accurate. But, you know, also not to get blamed for not doing it.
But I generally, too, I was saying to these guys, particularly in commercials where you are in a client-based mentality, you know, the agency, you've got the client at the top, you've got the agency below the client, you've got the producer, and everybody's in that, you know, kissing, you know what, to the next level up. And so I have tried to develop a mentality where I say we're the concierge to the locations. I want to say yes. I want you as another department to give me the opportunity to say yes to you. Whatever you want, I want to try to help you do your job and deliver as best as I can. But you got to help me too. And that's, you know, and that is generally my general overview and approach, because we're all wanting to make the best film or commercial or television series we can.
Commercials is very client and agency driven, more than, because there's a schism between the client and agency and the production crew or the service producer, whereas on a movie you're a unit. You know, you've got people who are all part of the same thing and have been in pre-production a lot longer. We'll get 3 days to turn a commercial round with a director who just came off a film, so he's expecting like a Hollywood-style experience, but with a short amount of time. And I'll get emails going, Dan, what's the Wi-Fi code for the location? We need it now for client. Client needs it so they can go on Facebook. I don't know, but like
exactly.
And I'll say, why don't you choose the location first? There's 22 in the Dropbox. And then I'll let you know what the Wi-Fi code is. Yeah. You need to get the order right of the day. The etiquette is, maybe if you told me where you wanted to go first, then I'd be able to find that out.
But it's also, I mean, I think now with COVID, it's even more important. I mean, I know we're sort of dwelling on commercials, because now that the client is often not there, or the agency is not there because of COVID, and everything is being done on Zoom, like the producer is interacting with the client on Zoom, whether you have a good Wi-Fi is actually part of the location selection.
Yeah, it's true.
So, you know, it's
although there are ways around that, I guess you need to flag that if you haven't got any Wi-Fi in order to streaming, right? So
should we? I think we're.
I think it's on. I think it is on. Yeah, I was about to say that I think you have made my point of being the heroes of the film industry, and I think we might need a break and carry on in the afternoon. We are very thankful for being here and for having you. And we will be discussing more things also in the afternoon and tomorrow, especially the role of LFGI and connections with film commissions. At some point, we would have to have this discussion as well. So thank you all, and we'll meet in the afternoon, okay?
And I think when we come back in the afternoon, I think probably almost a more Q&A and just sort of a more casual would be, I think, more fun for all of us.
Sure.
So I think, as Allison said, and I've been speaking to a number of people in Los Angeles, for example, when we want something that is supplied to the film industry, there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of people that have it. So if I call, for example, my vendor and I say, I need these pop-up tents delivered here, or I need these bathrooms here. Now, COVID presented a really interesting situation in Los Angeles because for the first time, we were hearing back from our suppliers, well, I don't have that. Because we needed so many more bathrooms for the different zones and so many more tables for the different lunch setups, and everything was just a lot more and a lot further and a lot more real estate required. And I don't know if you experienced this as well in the UK, but for us, it became something that we generally didn't think about. We were able at the last minute to call someone and say, I need you to bring these bathrooms over here. I need one more bathroom. I need air conditioners. And all of a sudden, our people were saying, oh no, we don't have that. So it pushed us back into a situation where we had to plan ahead. It also, I think, created a lot of opportunities for some more people to get into certain businesses that, for example, COVID cleaning services, are a lot of cleaning services, and people that were not in cleaning services came. Sanitizing, exactly. A lot of people got into sanitizing. Location managers started side businesses, so that, and we know collectively several who started different businesses that were there to really, they saw an opportunity and they created it to service the COVID. I think you all probably have that situation much more than we do. There's a lot more sort of forward planning, a lot less probably last minute opportunities to patch something together. And I think, Allison, you probably ran into that in Atlanta somewhat, right? Where you had to come up with solutions.
When I was working in Georgia when COVID hit, so I guess it's our topic right now, COVID. I was working in Georgia, and I had a major location, and we had literally rented a farmhouse. A family owned this house, and it was where their generations had gone. And we had taken all of their furniture out and stored it in storage units in town. We literally had 6 storage units full of this family's furniture, and we had redressed it to the 1850s, and we shut down. We were on day 112 out of 115, and we shut down for COVID. And that was March 15th. And that place sat like that until I went back in August. We got it shot in September finally. But the whole summer, we paid storage units. We paid for the house, and everything sat there. And there was a moment when they called me and said, we've got to get our cows back over. We had relocated their cows, and they needed to get their cows back into the barn or whatever. And we had turned their barn into a blacksmith shop. So when we came back, we were brand new, as you all recall, coming back in August and trying to plan how are we going to shoot again in September. The footprint had tripled with respect to how we could set up catering, how we could do everything, how we clean. The house looked like Vesuvius. What was it, Pompeii? It was just, there were just dead mice and dust in the space because we literally had walked away. But when we came back, that's the same thing. Everybody came back, and then we couldn't get equipment. We couldn't get enough restrooms. I don't know what the protocols were here in Greece, but we had to, all of a sudden they told us we had 4 times as many restroom units as we normally would have. And Georgia has a lot of equipment, not quite like LA, but when you find yourself fighting other location professionals trying to get a restroom because there's not enough and they wanted to label A zone, B zone, C zone, and then a bunch of people, now this, I'm curious about this, we got a lot of people that came into the business as COVID compliance, and a lot of people got jobs in entertainment that hadn't even been in entertainment. So the COVID compliance people didn't understand production. And you ran into these situations where they're trying to tell you you need to do things a certain way, and we're trying to say, you know, it's just not going to work. But I mean, we managed through that. I don't know where we are with all of that now. I mean, I don't know, we've got Delta hitting us, because I was starting to feel real comfortable on my last shoot. It was just getting to where they were calming down a little bit, and now I don't know. It's if you don't have the real estate though on a shoot to spread out, to put, you know how we used to put 150 people in a tent for lunch, and now you can't do it. They want 100 square feet per person sort of thing. So that has to be a challenge here, but I think from a COVID perspective, I'm just over it, man. I just would like things to go back to the normal chaos that we used to have, as opposed to the COVID chaos. I don't think that I have any answers or solutions. I just know that it costs a whole lot more money to shoot anything with the COVID compliance. You have that many more restrooms, you have that many more tables and chairs, and like I said, I spent a summer paying for things where we were at a standstill. So
I recently completed some additional cinematography on a Marvel movie called The Eternals. And I had before that I had come off of a fairly low budget Disney Plus TV series. My budget for porta potties was more than most of my budgets for an episode of the previous TV show. I spent $40,000. So this was a 4-day shoot, 4 days. We had a 3-week build at a location, which I'll probably talk about today or tomorrow in downtown Los Angeles. But we had about a 3-week build for a humongous green screen scene that took us a half a day to shoot. I mean, 3 weeks of grip, electric, rigging, incredible, humongous big green screen thing, half a day, done, gone. $40,000 in bathrooms, just like that. It was completely insane, and I think that's one of the I had to adjust to that, and I think they say go big or go home. That's what COVID. I mean, and that's I think what international. Dan can speak a lot to that. Is when we come somewhere, as Allison said, we're the circus, and we're big, and we're demanding, and we're the most petulant little bratty child that you can imagine and expect.
I mean,
no. Or on.
Yeah, so we found when we got shut down in March in the UK, I was working on an Apple job that got shut down. The one I referred to earlier on, the subject matter was about a global pandemic. And through the work that we were doing with the Coffee Tuesday at LMGI, and then the BEC2 union in the UK, and also other government agencies, Quango's quasi-government agencies in the UK, like Creative England and people like that, we lobbied with the Department of Culture, Media and Sport through the people that represented us, which is to go back to the can Greece do it? Can, you know, or there was some sort of comment made earlier on to say, look, our kind of colleagues in the US have put these procedures in place to carry on working. We can do that, and we can do more. We were talking for weeks about what we should do. We were kind of blue sky thinking. We weren't being told by any government what we should do. We were bringing it to the government, saying, we're going to do this. Have you got a problem with this? Is this safe, or is it not safe? And ultimately, the DCMS had to say yes, because we brought in so many measures, triple checked everything, that because we were desperate to get back to work, and COVID or no COVID, we were going to do it. And then the production started backing up a little bit, and you know, we became almost like essential workers because people were indoors all the time, running out of Netflix content. So we had to go out and make it, you know. So I'm joking, we're not. But what I'm saying is that we kind of were proactive about what we needed to do in order to go back to the world of work that we did. Where the difficulty lay, especially with location managers, is people were not allowed out of their homes, and we were on the street shooting, and people were going, how come there's 60 of you on that street corner shooting, and we're not allowed to go to the supermarket, you know? So there were social and sort of smaller political aspects to what we were doing, which became noticeable, you know? So then it was like, okay, what kind of locations could we shoot in where we wouldn't encounter this kind of attitude from people? Not that there's anything wrong with that attitude, I completely understand it. So we started going and looking at rural locations, locations with lower populations, locations where we could lock it off and it wouldn't be too much of a problem, and we had complete and utter control, not backlots, but almost backlots, so that everything, so we would do country estates, we would do parklands, we would do national parks, we would do all of this sort of stuff, that whilst we were waiting for a situation to stable itself and understand what was going on, we had to do something. So we rescheduled everything. Right, we can't shoot interiors, we can't shoot on a stage, let's shoot outdoors. So the pressure for location managers was, well, it's always going to be on location then, because sometimes when you're on a production, you can't wait for them to go back onto the stage for a week or two so that you can get some breathing space to go to the next bit of the filming that you need to prep. That wasn't happening. Everything was location driven, you know. So I'm not saying it was intolerable or anything. It's just an observation that I made about how things were rescheduled, you know. So.
I have a question. Do you all have a group where production people connect, like a Facebook group or a listserv or anywhere where you can share information and glean information from each other?
Yes.
Yes, actually, there are two major producers associations. One, we can say in general, are producers that deal with feature films, and the other with services and advertising and all the stuff. Some companies are in both. So we, first of all, especially during the first COVID, we make an internal group. We were talking a lot. We did exactly what Don just described. We suggested the protocols, which was much higher, whatever was happening in Greece, and we approved them and everything. And it was the first profession that opened in Greece. And we had exactly the same thing. How can you be 30 people or 50 people? They did not realize that we have COVID tests every day, sanitation every day, all the cars, anyway. So we did have a very special group at the time, especially because of COVID. Now we do have Facebook pages, and there are open and closed discussions, depending, some are just open to everybody, others are just for the producers, but there are.
Because we have found that to be not just referring to COVID, but we have found that to be invaluable in sharing information. I mean, one of the luxuries that we have in Los Angeles is that it's not to say that we're not competitive with each other for jobs, because we are, but there is generally enough work to go around. And so what we find is, and this is again going back to the LMGI, is that the more we help each other improve our skill levels or be more informed, the better off the next person is going to be at doing their job, the better off of a reputation we're going to create, and the better, we're going. And so I think that information sharing has been critical, and it's one of the things Dan's brought up a couple times. We started through the LMGI these Coffee Tuesdays where we have done discussions, and I think you started these similar discussions on how do you approach aerial photography. Like, I can say the first time I went up in a helicopter to scout, I thought, I need a bigger camera lens, and I went out and I bought like some big, huge lens, right? And I got out there and I sort of went, oh my God, I can't see anything with this. It's way too powerful. It's way too strong. So, I mean, just even sharing this kind of information of like, how do you get in a helicopter? How do you shoot with a helicopter? How do you, how does one go about this process is fantastic information for those that haven't done it. And I think a lot of people are sort of shy to say, well, I've never done this before and I don't really know how to do it, because they think it's going to reflect poorly on them. And I think it's, the value, again, of just sharing the info is critical. Go ahead.
I wanted to talk about some of the things that you went around the room and brought up. And I made some notes about organization and challenges and communication and managing people and scouting expectations. Not necessarily in that order, but it seems to me those are the things that brought you here, that have you curious or have you interested in what we are bringing to the table. Somebody brought up expectations when you show up at a place, and I would like to speak to that just a little bit on two fronts. One, from the scouting expectation. I've learned that sometimes you show up in a place and people want to show you what they love about their town or what they love about their space, as opposed to what matches the story and what we need to see. And I think that that's a really, really important thing for a company coming into a town, a country, whatever, is to be mindful of what it is that we are actually looking for and what is telling the story, not necessarily what you have that's beautiful or, stepping out of the tourism mindset and stepping into the filming mindset is huge, because it may be beautiful, but it won't tell the story that we're trying to tell. And I mentioned earlier today that our job is to tell someone else's story, not our own story. So that is a big deal to me, is giving us what we're looking for in the story, or the closest thing you have to it, but understanding what we're asking. Another thing that I think is really important is not overcommitting. And so this would be for the production houses and the film commissions and people like that. Don't say you can do something that you cannot do. Be very, very honest in, I think I can try to make that happen. Let me check. But don't, I've had that happen before, where someone has said, oh, surely we'll be able to film at, this space. And then we discover that we can't film in that space. And so be careful don't overcommit. That's a little bit of my advice on expectations for when we're coming in. And I'm sure, Dan, maybe you can offer something else on that topic.
Yeah, I think when you meet somebody from a municipality or a film commissioner in an unfamiliar terrain, country or whatever, it's really essential to try and create a rapport and an honesty with them, so that it's going back to what we talked about in the first session about sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
It's helpful for them to know that they haven't had the wool pulled over their eyes, that somebody isn't saying one thing and then waiting to get into a location and then doing another. Oh, we never told you about the explosion. Oh, right, yeah, there's an explosion. All right, okay, right, we get it. So, it's honesty really is essential to create that relationship, because you're going to have to ask these commissioners occasionally for favors. You're going to have to ask them to bail you out. There's been instances, and I can't give details, about crew that have been arrested, about crew that have been done for drink driving, the crew that have had other allegations thrown at them. They're in an unfamiliar country. They're not aware of the laws. They're not aware of the customs of where they're at. And sometimes that person can pull a few strings, at least enough to help the crew out, right? So, and then there's things like the medical assistance or the emergency care and all of this stuff that obviously will be covered by the production department. But, in the first instance, the locations and the integrity of those going forward relies on an honest relationship with the people who you're asking to help you.
So, Dan, what was it like for you when the first big when you had the first big American production come in that you worked with?
The size of it.
And so can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, because it was a crew of around about 300 people. And then it was, that was a Transformers job. And that was even just one segment. I wasn't the supervisor on that. I just did my segment. So, at some point there would be a prep crew of, 50 or 60, and then that would gradually, you can feel it building, more people arriving, and then, it gets busy. I mean, we were in Abu Dhabi shooting a movie there, and all told, the supporting artists were about 500 maybe, and the crew was about 200, 250 in one space, moving around on one of the particularly busy days. So you've got to triage 700 people in and out in a day. You don't have time, you've still got to squeeze it into one filming day. You don't get extra time to do that. You're still shooting your scenes in a normal way. So getting hold of local crew that are able to help you, that's essential. You don't need to know exactly what the job is in detail. You just need to be able to have some intelligence to pick up quickly what you need from them. Suppliers, are the local suppliers reliable enough for you to ask for 700 tables and chairs, or catering for that many people to happen and be delivered in one go without slowing down the shoot, and things like that. Transportation.
Background talent.
Drivers that don't fall asleep at the wheel, that kind of thing. So, the hardest thing to express is really the size of it, the size of the circus. Once you've done one, you start thinking, nothing I can say to you now nothing I can say to you will tell you how big this is going to get until you go through it.
It's a never-ending hungry machine. It really, until it's over.
And sometimes it damages infrastructure, social infrastructure in a small town a little bit. Sometimes the crew end up as a catalyst for long-held resentments between the Lord Mayor and the councillor, or the councillor and a senior politician somewhere in Athens or wherever else. And you're like, all we did was ask to shut the road down. And we opened up a hornet's nest of long-standing problems we knew nothing about, because all we did was arrive, and that was it. So there's things like that tend to happen when you're asking for very large requests.
He was going to say unreasonable. And
Yeah.
we always ask for unreasonable things. That is the nature of the film business. I think that's hilarious. He said, would you ask for, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but everything we do to them.
Yeah.
Exactly. He said it's not unreasonable. Right. It's unreasonable to them.
But we're playing devil's advocate for both sides, so
right.
we need, you know.
And that is to your point. I forgot your name. I know the gentleman right there in the black shirt when he was talking about managing, like that sort of in between and what that role that we have, because we do have to honestly ask for something that seems like ridiculous. 2 weeks ago, I crashed a car through a gate in one building into a state park to you know, like we were there saying we would like to burst through the next door property and crash this car down the side of the park and just barely miss all your trees and ecological everything, and you know, have it drive through the rest. And we got a few motorcycles we want to have come through there too. And you know, when you're explaining to someone who has not had to do that, they are looking at you as though you're being ridiculous. And you are in fact being ridiculous, but you're also being honest. And to Dan's point about sustainability, the key is to be as honest as possible so that you don't misrepresent. Don't say, well, no, we won't hit that bush, because you know you're going to hit the bush. Be prepared, anticipate with how you're going to fix that situation. Are you going to replace that bush? Are you going to tie that bush back? Are you going to trim that bush a little bit so that maybe the car can get over it? But just be honest, because the resentment comes when you are not honest. And it is true that in a small place where they have not seen a big movie, or even just in someone's home or anything,
or a neighborhood,
they honestly cannot. They're excited and they think they understand, but they don't understand. You can talk all day long, and until we show up with that big, massive thing, they really don't understand it. And it's scary. And the key is to keep your word so that whatever you broke, you fix. However you tried to say you weren't going to break it, then actually do that. Try to protect everything. Try to canvass in advance as many neighbors and merchants and everyone and explain to them what's happening in advance, not on the back end like JJ mentioned earlier. It's just like walking into a store and being ignored. Then you're standing there and the merchant acts like you're invisible. But if they stop for a second and say, I'll be with you in just a minute, you feel so different. You feel like, okay, I've been acknowledged. I can wait it. I can hang in here. But if they just keep going and ignore you, you're just mad already when it starts. So that advance work is really, really critical to keeping the environment happy, the neighborhood, the merchants, the everyone.
I think too, one of the things that I do often is if I'm working with a new director, like we were going back to the idea of anticipating. If I'm working with a new director, I like to look at their films. If it's a film director, if it's a TV director, I like to look at their body of work. If it's a commercial director, I like to look at their body of work. And I like to see, how do they shoot? What's their style? So that when I'm scouting, I can imitate their style as closely as I can. I still want to show what the location is, but I might do a couple close-ups. If it's somebody that I know likes to do a lot of handheld camera work, I will get in close and get in tight and focus on that bottle because that's what they like to see. I like to put, if I'm shooting for a product, for example, I will take something with me or I'll find something around the house to stick into that scene. And then I like to also anticipate, and I tell my assistants what we were talking about this morning is I'll stand at, like, I can give you an example on a show that I was doing called The Mayor. And we were doing a scene where we were shutting down an intersection in the middle of Los Angeles, fairly big intersection. And the storyline was that in this town, there was an intersection where a traffic light was always broken, and the traffic light, there were accidents there all the time, and they were trying to get the mayor to come to the table and fix this situation because there were accidents at this intersection all the time. So, of course, the director picks a intersection that has no traffic light at all. So it's not even that we can change the traffic light. It's that now we have to go up and string a traffic light across this intersection so that, and then a traffic light that we can control so that we can do this scene. As a part of that scene, I stood in that intersection. I mean, that already was its own dilemma, and that, as Allison says, that's where your relationships come in so importantly, because we were able to call the utility company, and as it turned out, they came out with bucket trucks. They said, we'll be there. They were there at 5 a.m. They helped us string the string that was hanging, that we were hanging the light from. They helped us string everything. They stayed with us all day. They actually ended up solving some other issues. Our special effects person had not done we were going to do a puddle on the side of the road. The effects person didn't get the memo somehow. So they helped us sandbag and create, their engineers helped us create what it was that we needed to get this shot. But I would say the biggest thing is, as we sat in that intersection and I said to my assistants, okay, now, look up at that fire escape over there. I can promise you that they're going to want to hang laundry from those windows and that fire escape. They're going to want to create this scene. They're going to want to create this environment. And my assistant nodded and didn't go check out and make sure that we could stand up there. I said, they're going to put camera up there. I promise you. Didn't come out on the tech scout. Standing there on the day of the shoot, the director's like, can we put the camera up there and hang the clothing up there? Because we know that, this is something that we want to do. And I think that, it just goes back to anticipating, not being afraid to ask the questions over and over again. Who's covering this? Who's covering that? Do we need this? And I have actually a list here of a lot of the expectations that we have in these bigger productions in terms of prep that we can go into. But Dan looks like he has to say something.
Well, no, it was only to reflect upon that and also say that whatever you think it is, it's always bigger. So,
yeah,
special effects supervisors are always going to, at the last minute, say, we need to put smoke all the way down here. We need steam machines over there, and... again,
condor. When you bring a condor in.
Yeah, again, or rain bars 20 times longer. It's always going to be more. It's always more. So.
Does everyone know what we mean when we say a condor?
Like a cherry picker.
Like a big.
Cherry picker.
Yeah, like a big.
So yeah, you're right. It's always a little bit more than what you think. I mean, we worked with a director once who wanted, this is relevant with regards to ancient monuments in certain countries like Greece, where there's a lot of sensitivity about these locations, and yet that's kind of why people want to be here as well, right? So, we were shooting Stonehenge in Wiltshire, and very strict rules about what you can and can't do, and you can't clamber all over it. You can't drill things into it. You can't stand. And we ended up building a copy of it down the road that we called Fohenge. And but the director was, when the initial reply came back, no, you can't. You should always ask for everything, rather than don't be a mouse. Always be a lion. Always ask for everything, and then you'll get told no on a few things. If you were a mouse, you still get told no. So, I always ask for everything, but, and expect to get maybe 30 or 40% of those yeses. But we'll talk about no's and yeses tomorrow. But like the director, who's like a big Hollywood director, he said, no, we're going to make this place famous. And it's like, Stonehenge. Yeah. And we were like, well, it's been here 3000 BC, so I think we're good, But yeah, that was the comment. So
I think too, I keep hammering this like idea of visual language, and I ran into another commercial. It was a commercial director who said, well, I want a mid-century modern architecture, which is a very popular, I don't know if here it is, but it was a very popular style of architecture, and it's gone through its waves of revivals in Los Angeles. Mid-century architecture meaning something that was built in around the 50s. So Location Scout pulls a lot of mid-century architecture, and the director says, what is it? What is all this? And he looks at this, he goes, this looks like it was built in the 50s. And so here we are, right? So I don't know what his perception, so, the Scout's like, well, yeah, that's this mid-century architecture. And you obviously don't want to make your director feel like an idiot. But, it's like, well, so then we started looking at images. So then we started pulling images and trying to define through visual language what he meant by mid-century architecture. And what he meant was really contemporary architecture. So,
see, that's a question, though, because we talk about these delicate moments that location managers have to manage through. And I would have liked to have been a fly on the wall when the director says, what is this? I asked for mid-century, and you're showing them mid-century. How do you tell the director, this is mid-century? Like, how do you delicately, do you just say, okay, just show me, maybe I misunderstood, just show me what it is?
You sort of take the fall, right? That's exactly it.
But you do. Yeah. You have to take the fall.
You take the fall.
You have to take the fall. You have to. You
die
have
on
to
the sword. You die on the sword.
You have to sort of say, maybe I misunderstood what you're saying.
Well, it's like when you're teaching your kids left from right, and I always used to say to my little boy, no, it's the other left.
Right.
It's like the other one.
It's that delicate moment. I'm glad you brought that up, because it is one of those things. And then later on, you get to have a beer and tell your friends what an idiot this guy is. But in the moment, you have to be the one, because otherwise there's nothing real like Hollywood. They are going to resent you for being right and for making them look bad. So in order to make sure, and I don't know how other people are, but when we're talking about U.S. productions, unfortunately, folks from the U.S., that's the problem. That is a problem. And so you don't want to upstage. You don't want to, you're right. And so you have to go home and tell your family that you were right. But in the moment, in order to make the production go smoothly, you have to take the hit. I'm glad you brought that up, because a few people talked about sort of the management and the challenges, and that's a great example.
And in a way, you could hone your skills, take an architectural history class, do all of those things, like an LMGI member that we know in the UK. We did some scouting on the series Downton Abbey, so we split England in two. I did the north, she did the south, and you're talking about quite nuanced architectural terms for these a whole range of periods that this house had to have lived in, had to have been created, and then the generations that lived before the generations we saw on the camera. So there is growth rings, especially in countries that have got a fascinating history, like Greece or England or wherever, where that history is tangible, and so you could discuss columns. You're talking about Corinthian columns being Doric columns, right? And the director's going, that's definitely Doric, not Doric. You know, like, it's like, okay, I can't believe we're having it. And sometimes production designers don't nail it either. So you're there sometimes, like you've said, thinking, but I know this, I've got this. I did an art history degree, so, you know, those were elements that I did. That years, my old man used to say to me, why do you take an art history degree? You're never going to get a job. Why do you waste my money and time? And, you know, and then years later, I'm working on a period drama and thinking, this is making sense. You know, I remember all my art history, so, you know.
But this is why I speak over and over again about speaking visually, you know, being able to pull some photography files and saying, is this what you're talking about? And not being shy to do that before you go out and waste a lot of time and scout for a day and come back with something that somebody doesn't want. So I think maybe should we get into workflow a little bit more too, or?
You could answer that before I ask my questions.
Okay, which one? Which
question? Which question? Yeah.
I think what sums up today's conversation is, let's say that someone says you have a request for a big film for production. What will make you say, let's consider Greece? Well, that's the main question that sums up today. You know, someone comes to you and say, we have this production and it has this, and this data. What's going to make you consider Greece? JJ?
I think, you know, for me, it's, do you have the visuals? Can you deliver on the locations? And can you support the production? Will we find, I mean, I have a list here. There's, you know, I'll just run this down with you. Air conditioning, bathrooms, cleaners, policemen if we have to hold traffic, dumpsters, trash, waste again, makeup stations, power, supplying power for the camera truck, overnight power, power for craft service, security guards. Right? Is it safe? One of the Coffee Tuesdays we did, which Dan and I talk about all the time, which we found really fascinating, was on the TV series Narcos, how they had to go into areas which were actually, you know, part of the narcotics wars and work with the gang members and the actual real narcos to recreate several of these scenes and how they had to navigate that situation. So I think we want to know, are we going into a dangerous situation? Is there gang activity here? Does the local area not want us or want us? Water, obviously, you know, water supplies for trailers and honey wagons and trailers and honey wagons. Barricades, how do we support the catering areas? Electrical, again, different systems, different power uses, different needs. Fire situations, are we, you know, safety, fire situations, hospitals, medical services. These are all the things that we want to know as we come in. Work lights, wardrobe racks, tent barricades. Is there, I mean, some of this stuff obviously we can bring, and I'm sure you can bring from places like Athens and nearby countries. But, you know, some of these things are, honey wagons are very large. I mean, how much of that exists, and can you truly support this production? Yes, we do. Yes, and that's where Allison was saying, be honest, because again, we can figure out a solution. For example, if we don't have a honey wagon, we can say, well, maybe we can rent a house nearby the production, and we can put the talent in that house. Can we air condition that house, though, because we don't want the talent sweating and ruining their makeup, right? But we can come up with solutions if we are given the realistic information. Yes?
Yeah, they might not.
It is, and I think we like to talk to other, I want Dan to address this, but also I think we like to talk to other location managers too, because it's almost sort of like we will get the real scoop, or maybe it's a production supervisor, or, but, we like to get, as Bonda's saying, boots on the ground, right? We want to talk to that person that's boots on the ground, that's dealing with the day in, day out, and, oh, hey, by the way, when we did Transformers, we ran into this. When we did this film, we ran into that.
I mean, I can't imagine this island. You'd have to charter a ferry, like a vehicle ferry separately from Piraeus to bring the equipment in separately in order to sustain.
Or 2, or 3.
Or 5,
or 4.
whatever. But, you'd... so then you have to moderate the shoot, and you temper the expectations of the producers, and you say, no, we're going lo-fi on this. We're going to do this. If you want this beautiful location that's irreplaceable, then these are the restrictions. We can't bring 15 Winnebagos around these back streets of the island. It's impossible. So we have to create a base camp somewhere where we're allowed to drive off. We have to bring a ferry from Piraeus separately, charter that. As we all know, there's no splash without cash. Anything to do with a boat or the marine world costs a fortune. So they need to be ready for that cost as well. Boat people know each other the same as film people know each other, right? So I've always found add 30 or 40% to everything as soon as you mention the word sea, Then I guess in answer to the first question, it's twofold for me. One is, if you're starting off a film industry in a country more for international production, you want to be starting off as a location-driven activity, not a studio stage-driven activity, because the stages maybe aren't built yet, or maybe, I don't know how many stages are in Athens, or whether there's volumetric stages, or green screen stages, or water tanks, or any of these things that exist. And if that doesn't exist, you're going to be looking at inward investment from the government and outward investment from elsewhere, and then you're going to be looking at, whilst you're doing that, generating as much international production location-driven only, rather than building massive sets. One of the things that does entice people is the ATL. As soon as you get an ATL, they can bring in their lead actors, the lead creatives, everybody else, and get their 40% above the line reduction. And then they're going to start thinking, maybe it would be cheaper if we built a stage here as well, or whatever. So, or a co-production or a co-investment.
Right.
So,
or took over a big ship hangar and soundproofed it.
Yeah,
or,
I mean,
it might
no
be worth the
accident that
investment.
most of the early UK stages were ex-military places, let's say, because they were the biggest, interiors that they could find. Cardington, which is a big interior Warner Brothers thing, is they had airships in there. They're like Graf Zeppelins. It's a huge space. You could put a 10-bedroom house in there and it looks this big, So, but that's a happy accident. You have to build these from scratch if they don't exist. I've been in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, the Saudi Arabia thing. Saudi Arabia, we were saying to them, just generate as much interest in the beautiful desert locations. Whilst you're doing that, have a separate conversation with the people you need about what else do you need to do next in 5 years, let's say. But in the meantime, get your name out there for loads of international productions that are showcasing what's on offer in that country that's unique and can't be filmed 10 minutes from LA, or wherever. So,
So basically, what you're saying is that when you're building a location attractive, vendors, to educate the people that they will make this attractive. I mean, you have to pay carpenters, the electricity, all this.
Sometimes, I mean, when we did War Machine, we had different layers of labor. So we had Indian labor, Filipino labor, Pakistani and Bangladeshi and Afghan labor, and they were all different costs and all different skill levels. And then they kind of knew something. Some of them were experts, and some of them weren't. So in another life, I used to work in the construction industry, and there was a culture of gangmasters, like guys that were like, took other people who didn't know as much under their wing and taught them. So that was the way that they assembled themselves in order to learn quickly. You're always going to have a problem. You know, there were certain members of the construction team that we sourced locally who don't have the same approach to health and safety that we would expect. So therefore, if there was, and Netflix were keen to never have an accident on any of their jobs, because there might be an accusation that they could be negligent, for instance, even though they weren't. So I used to have, how do you put it, frank discussions with these guys about their safety was our reputation. I would give them PPE, steel boots, hats, gloves, vests. They would sell them in order to, do what... I was like, guys, why are you in flip-flops and vests again? Right. Oh, yeah, we lost them. No, you sold them. We're going to have to buy another $300 worth of PPE. This is... Well, I mean, we can talk about different cultural stuff maybe when we drill down into the detail tomorrow, but these are some of the things that you approach. The marine industry is notorious for accidents. The sailors, you treat their own, because they're so experienced, they treat their own safety with nonchalance. But people who are crew members on a ship or a boat, they're nervous. They don't know how, the ship, when they say, oh, we'll just do a ship-to-ship transfer, it's like, no, thanks. Let's go back. I'm not going from one ship to another in the open sea. These are conversations that I'm witnessing, thinking, this is just broken legs, broken arms, that kind of thing. So it's all of this kind of thing as well that, And
I think Becky Breck was telling, another location manager was telling a story about being somewhere where there were coconut trees and how, it's sort of with an American production, the setup of pulling a coconut down from a tree would be, okay, well, let's bring in the lift. Let's harness our safety guy to the lift. Let's have 3 people around to watch him and spot him and make sure that it's safe as the cherry picker goes up. In the meantime, as they're setting up the cherry picker, the local guy shimmies up the tree, pulls down 3 coconuts, and he's gone. And that's fantastic, but we can't do that, right? Because we have union rules and we have regulations, and safety is, we can't risk a production being shut down for a safety issue. So, and we have this all the time in the U.S. too, with our own departments having to stop the grips from not getting too close to the parapet on a rooftop because it's not studio safe. So I think that's, another thing that would come up here a lot. I would guess is.
I mean, there's a blurring of boundaries between a production manager and a location manager. Some of these subjects that we're covering here, you need to be cognizant of all of them, or else you're going to get caught out. You might not be directly responsible for implementing those things that need to happen. Sometimes you are, but sometimes you're not. So, but if you knew about it, then, at least you're prepared,
I would like to rephrase a little bit my question. I would like to know, as far as I understand, we have not shot in Greece, right? Neither of you. What is the notion of international location manager about Greece? When, suppose it comes in conversation, okay, let's do that in Greece. Okay, let's check out Greece. What you would expect, what you don't expect, what you're afraid of, what you say, no, oh, yes, that could be done. I mean, I'm trying to find the notion now.
I would like to speak to that just kind of quickly, because I've been someone who's out here trying to figure out how to come to Greece forever. And I think that the first reason to come to Greece is clearly the location. So Greece is going to be considered for something that looks like Greece or something that can double for something else. For instance, when I mentioned earlier today, I mentioned that movie that was supposed to go to Chile. The storyline wasn't Chile. We were going there to play it for Cuba. And also Alaska, for winter. And so the idea is that when we first came in, JJ and I were in a taxi and we were riding, and she said, I could see this for LA, because there was sort of a desertous sort of look coming in from the airport in Athens. And, so you want to showcase multiple looks, not just the beautiful thing that we're going to picture as Greece, but let's say we're coming here. Can I, maybe if I have to have 2 days that look like, the valley in Los Angeles, do you have something that can show that too? So that's the first thing, the versatility of the locations and the region. So something that's going to show all those different looks is sort of a critical reason to come here, because otherwise we're only going to come someplace for that and for the money. That means producers are producers. You want a look and you want the rebate. They don't even look at places half the time anymore without the tax incentive. So those are the first elements. And then what JJ was speaking to about all those other sort of support infrastructure things, those are very, very important, but you also have to be versatile in them. You have to, back to the job of the location manager, but you have to sort of think through, okay, well, I don't have this, but what are my options? And you want to be able to say, well, we don't have that, but we have this. And it could be something as simple as, caterers wash their dishes every night someplace. When they are in a remote location, I have had to go find restaurants that'll let us come in with the caterers overnight to clean the dishes, so they make a deal. Every night they're washing their dishes at this place. So there's those sort of things. But I think that, like Dan was saying, you kind of work your way into being completely prepared, and with every production that comes in, you typically have added something. You've got some new version, you've got some new thing, but the looks and the money are what is going to bring and accessibility, accessibility to get people here. Granted, we came from Los Angeles, it was a hike, but it wasn't as much of a hike for Dan. And maybe had we just come from New York or from even Atlanta, it's not quite the same as coming from Los Angeles. But accessibility and versatility of the locations that you have here. So if you can show that you can get more than just the classic thing that we all picture as Greece, then you can say, hey, well, on this island we have this, and in Athens we have this, and and I would say those are to me the major reasons that someone is going to come to Greece to go.
Yeah, I was just going to. I mean, the other thing is a self-confident and mature country that knows what it is happy for it to be portrayed as something else, So sometimes I've encountered going into spaces, places, locations, and I've said, right, we're going to use this as, we're going to use this as New York, Yeah, but this is Manchester, or this is Liverpool, or this is Glasgow, or this is whatever. It's not Brooklyn, it's not New York. That's, by the way, we've been recorded. Some of these are my home areas, and they've always been absolutely fine, and the commissioners are fantastic people. But the point being that as they go through many, many requests, they're naturally relaxed about saying, yeah, you can turn it into New York, yeah, you can, and so you have rough flavors of locations. So, for instance, Eastern Mediterranean, could it be Jerusalem? Could it be the Islamic world? Could Athens be the Islamic world with the right art department pixie dust sprinkled all over it, So it's that kind of thing that's interesting to producers. The next question I'll get is, are there any crew there? What crew is there? There's a Steadicam operator who's Greek, who I know from Manchester, who's working on Indiana Jones right now, but we were just chatting over at lunch about it. So everybody's connected, and it's a small world, and it's getting smaller. And this is to go back to what JJ was saying about what kind of internal networks do you have, and how can those link up with a bigger chain, globally, because if ultimately the work emanates from Los Angeles or Hollywood, most of the work you're interested in, then, that's not a massive world when you think about it. And also, we were keen to try and attract interest and investment from Korea and China, which is a completely different market, huge market, absolutely massive market. And yet, arguably bigger than Hollywood, maybe, I don't know. India, it's a huge market. So there are loads of rich seams to exploit in terms of getting interest and whatever else from people. And I suppose what happens is that it's all about the preconceptions of what somebody thinks Greece is. Like a Bollywood film director or a Hong Kong film director or Beijing might have a notion of what Greece is, and what will sell in his country is that notion, and a Hollywood director or a British director would have a different idea, or producer. So I guess, and then there's the co-production element, which is a different kettle of fish. It's all to do with
finance and
So, but yeah, it's often what can we double as? What are the facilities like, and what are the crew like?